Okay.
I call to order the Committee of the Whole work session to set the agenda for next week's board meeting. Roll call, please.
Ms. Bibla? Here. Mr. Brogna?
Here.
Ms. McCurdy?
Here.
Mr. Macri?
Here.
Ms. Spath? Mr. Swain? Ms. Campbell? Here. Ms. Haddix?
Here.
Mr. Boone?
Here.
7 members present.
Sure. Mr. Bruno, members of the administration who are here, Joanne Black, Beth Ann Harris, Natasha Malazzo, David Simonovich, Deanne Bosey, Damian Blanchard, Scott Grummagin, John Gorm, Jeff Parentoni, and Peg Foster. Absent are Stephanie Whiteshot, Kevin Sayre, and Bonnie Gregg.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Before we begin our committee meetings, I have an announcement to make. There is an anticipated opening on the Crestwood School Board. The resignation of a present member is due to the fact that that member is moving out of the school district. Acceptance of that letter of resignation will be on next Thursday's agenda. Any individual who has the time and is interested in serving on the board for the remaining 1.5 years of the 4-year term is asked to send a letter of interest to me, barry.boone@csdcommons.org, by noon on next Tuesday, June 21st. Those letters will be shared with the board with a possible appointment at next Thursday's meeting. And again, my email, barry.boone@csdcommons.org, can also be found on the district website, and letters of interest are due by next Tuesday at noon. Okay, we will now begin our committee meetings. We will begin with financial. Mr. Brogna.
Thank you, Mr. Boone. We'll do roll call. I see that, is Ms. Haddix present? Ms. Haddix?
Present.
Mr. Swain? So, 2 members present. We'll be seeking approval of the minutes of the May 12th Financial Planning Committee meeting. Do I have a motion? Motion, Ms. Haddix?
Motion.
All in favor? Aye?
Aye.
So the items, there's a significant number of items under the financial planning with so much going on. And probably one of the most important things that we want to hear is from Ms. Malazzo, the school district budget presentation. But we'll be seeking approval to move the items 1 through 21 through to the voting meeting next week. Do I have a motion from the committee? Okay, we're going to go through the items first.
Well, since number 5 is left with blanks, maybe we should have our presentation, and then maybe we can discuss filling in the blanks.
Great point. I'll turn this part over to Ms. Malazzo for the budget presentation.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Again, my name is Natasha Malazzo. I'm the business manager here at the district. And tonight we're going to go over the following. These are the items that I have on the agenda to discuss with all of you. So first item on on the agenda we have is our budgeting process and meeting timelines. We'd just like to recap what has been going on since the inception of going through this budget. Next, we'll be going over the 22-23 proposed final budget, just reviewing of that. We're going to go over revisions made from the proposed final budget to current date, potential 22-23 millage scenarios, and then also different millage scenarios, preliminary 23-24 budgetary highlights, and then the recommendation for the financial planning committee agenda. Okay, so again, just to kind of quickly go over, first we had our first budget meeting back in March 10th. Mr. Barr was presenting to all of you at 4 o'clock. He announced the upcoming dates that we had for all of our committees. We reviewed current year expenditures with potential expenditures back from March, and then reviewed potential revenue scenarios based upon the budget at that time in March. Then the second meeting we had was April 13th at 4 o'clock. That's when I came here. And we went over components of the budget, expenditures at that time. We went over the history of the budget. We went over what a school district fund balance was, and then potential millage scenarios and revenues. Third, that was just past May at 4 o'clock. We reviewed proposed final budget data. We had updated millage scenarios, and we went over preliminary information regarding to the 23-24 budget. So here we are today, our fourth budget committee meeting. We are going to discuss the final budget, and then, like I said, the agenda was on the prior slide. And just to recap, all of our meetings have been held here, or we had them in the auditorium. All right, so just to review, back in May, the board voted on May 19th the proposed final budget. It had a 2.4% increase. At that time, the expenditures were $46,421,966. Our revenues at that time were $45,829,915. And what that meant at that time with the 2.4% increase, the budget deficit was projected to be $592,051. Okay, and just a little recap, this data was actually was pulled from the proposed final budget, which was on our district website, which was also publicly displayed in the admin office. Okay, so what have we done since May? So we've had some expenditure reductions. Back on June 2nd, we did have the board approve the support staff union furloughs. With that reduction, that goes into effect June 30th, so as of July 1. So those salaries and benefits have been removed out of this budget that you're going to see.
What was that total?
What's that?
What was that total reduction?
Roughly it was around $400,000 because there is workman's comp, premiums that we would have to pay if the individuals stay on the workman's comps, and that's around $25,000. We put in a reduction in the athletic services with LVHN, which is now posted on our district website. As of today, we just had that finally executed on both parties, so that is on our website.
And that reduction?
What's that?
What's that reduction?
I have some highlights on that to kind of go over what that is. In one of these piles that I have here. Okay, so with that, we would have, it actually has a no cost to the district for 5 years. Now I just lost my clicker, there it is, okay. Before I'm like, Danny, where's my clicker? So there is no cost to the district. We're now gonna have 2 athletic trainers. This is a 5-year contract, again at 0, with the option of renewal for 3 years. They have provided sponsorships for the district. They are giving a $20,000 marketing sponsorship. With the board's approval, we will move that into the capital fund for projects, whether it's athletics or just other kinds of situations that the board feels is necessary for that $20,000. They also gave us a $5,000 new partnership and $1,000 athletic sponsorship. So there will be 1 female and 1 male athlete working with our athletic director, identifying 2 athletes to receive $500 scholarships. And then also they will be providing $5,000 yearly in supplies. So it's a 0 cost for our district.
the question, maybe even a little bit further, was what did we have budgeted for athletic trainers if we didn't go with this contract?
So,
Maybe, I don't know,
yeah.
emails or?
Yep, so roughly something like this would cost, you know, the district like $60,000 we were budgeting for this. So it's a reduction in our budget. So with that, we have a revenue increase in this new proposed final that you'll be voting on in June next week. So revenue increases, transportation subsidy. I don't want to speak on behalf of the Director of Transportation, but he will have some information regarding the subsidy. So after this budget presentation, we go through the committee agenda, he will go over that with you.
Roughly how much of a increase?
$100,000.
Okay. So we're gonna reduce 460 and we gained 100. So that basically puts us 560,000 to the good from May 19th.
Correct.
No.
Well,
You would subtract 100,000 on the,
so the revenue side went up 100.
Right, but the
and then
difference, I'm
reduced.
talking the difference. So our difference changed to the positive,
Correct.
$560,000.
One side was revenue, the other side was
Mhm.
expenditure.
So, Natasha, nothing changed with the state subsidies?
I did not change any of the subsidies. We kept them at the 2% that we had discussed
And
prior.
have you heard anything?
I haven't heard anything that's going to get approved before June 30th. The only rumor that I heard through speaking with other business managers was they were going to cut it in half. So if that's the case, if we are anticipated roughly about $1 million, we budgeted 2, half would be, you know, so we gain it possibly, you know, an extra 250, 300,000. So
I was on a Zoom with PSBA and board leaders across the state on Tuesday, and they had the legislative rep from PSBA make a presentation, and they're getting a hard time to get the Republicans to come off of a 0% increase in the House. I would imagine we would see some, but right now, even with the surplus that the state has, the House committee, the Republicans on that committee are stuck at 0, so it's
So
going
if
to
it
be a
stays
fight.
at 0, we're 200 or 300 to the bad then, because that's what's baked in currently?
186,000.
186,
Yeah.
200.
So no, I mean, anything additional above the zero is a gain.
No, you have 186 in
We have
already.
2% into this budget.
Yeah. Yeah, so they need to at least approve that, or else we have a $200,000 problem.
Okay. So, with the reduction, we also had some increases. CTC increase based on potential enrollment. That information, if you remember, came out when we were at the June meeting, that they had just provided us with that information. So I did need to increase our CTC budget. Just continuing to keep an eye on our charter and special education costs. I did find it necessary to increase our budget based upon the data that I had,
How much?
about $100,000,
And how much on the CTC?
about $160,000.
160,000?
Yeah, it was not budgeted at the rate that potentially would have had. I didn't have the data back from around this time last year, so I did need to increase the budget.
I thought we saw something where it was $20,000.
It is $20,000, but actually into our computer system.
So we were $140,000 under budget for what we paid this year.
And that could be just based on enrollments have changed from April and that data. I'm not sure, I wasn't here, when that data was entered, so I'm not really sure, but all I can say is now the data that I received in June is now included into this calculation now. And then also we have professional staff Act 93 early retirement incentive and severance agreement. That is on our agenda and it's pending solicitor review, so I can't go into too many details regarding that, but that is something that is now put into this budget.
So what we're saying is between the reductions and increases, we're still, let's call it 250 to the positive from May 19th.
I'm gonna go over all that next. So, I promise it'll go down like a few slides, but I promise. Okay, so here are potential millage, revenue scenarios. I am highlighting a new option right here for the board, it's 3%. If you've been at our meetings, we've been talking about 0, 2.4, 4.2. I was asked to put together, hey, what would 3% look like? So I am sharing with the board and the community another option for the board to consider. So just reviewing all of that, like I said, we've been going over this, but with the revenue at 95% collection, including the transportation addition that we just talked about of 100,000, this row here would give you the revenue collection, and this would now give you your budget deficit. As you can see, every option there, whether it's coming from a 4.2, a 3, a 2.4, or 0, you can see that the fund balance here is still in the red. Okay, and then in this here, the way that this is calculated, I apologize, my back to you, but this is calculated by taking the 1.3 number here, subtracting your deficit will then give you this line item here. So depending on which option, this will give you your fund balance.
Could you back up the screen? So all the numbers from the previous screen are calculated into these numbers.
Correct. So this is now going to show you what your final budget would look like. And I have it on a slide later in a couple slides down that kind of puts everything in one shot for you guys to see it then too. So what does that look for the taxpayers? Again, we've been kind of going over these scenarios, but I did add this 3% here. So based upon, each category here, so we'll go 150,000, land and home at 3%, it would be $1,815. 4.2 would be 1,836, 2.4, and that goes over this way. So this chart I've been showing for the last couple of months, but I just think it's important that we just review that with the adding of the 3%
In
there.
Natasha, column 3, I think you have a,
That has to be a typo, they went
Right.
under 150,000, the second column, or second row.
Here.
Because it's the
before.
same as the
One box.
4.2.
Oh, okay, yeah, that's
It's
probably
it's
error.
less,
I'll fix
obviously.
And so's the
No.
bottom one.
Yeah, I'll fix that. This row.
I think
right
that
here.
one's accurate.
Yeah, I'll fix
Believe
that.
that.
No,
Before I
because,
post it on the website, I'll fix
The
that.
12.03 millage is 1836 also.
Yeah, I'll look at this whole row here
Right.
and redo that and send that to all of you. And before I post it, I will.
How does it,
correct
what
that.
did our revenue, what did our expected expenditures increase into this plan from the current year?
From the current budget year?
Mm-hmm.
So, in previous presentations, I have shared what the historical expenditures have been. So back in 1920, our expenditures, and like in the board, if you're looking, it would be in your presentation, in your binders if you have them. So in 1920, we were, I'm just gonna round, 41,074,000. At this point, in 22-23, we're at 46,384,000. So in the 1920 school year to the current, budget that we're talking about now, there's a significant increase. From 21-22 to 22-23, roughly it's a little under 6%. 20 to 21, 21-22, potentially is 7%, and between the gap between all of them, it's between 11 and 12%.
And that's total revenue?
This is expenditure.
Expense.
What
Oh,
our
expense.
expenditure, what our
Okay.
budget growth.
Got it.
So what we're saying is that going into the 22-23 year forecasted budget grew 6%. And over the last 3 school years, we grew over 10%, closer to 11%.
well, one point there though, those are budget numbers you gave. The
Right.
actuals from the audit in each of those few years, we come in under budget by
That
a
is
couple
correct.
percent in each of the years.
That's correct. Yep. And I think it's important to note that where potentially this increase is coming from, looking into the data, you know, of course we could say salary and benefits, but that's not all that it's been, right? It's been your cyber that we have to budget for. It's been our special education costs and our outplacements. It's buildings and grounds and debt service. Now this year the debt service went down, but the debt service will go up, but that is something, you know, between the years, a little bit of history, that is where it's coming from. So it is not just one singular area, it's a multiple of areas. And transportation, I mean, that's been going up too, right? So what does that look like? With, you know, increases to the taxpayer. So 4.2, 75,000, you know, it's $36. You know, over here it's 123 at 3%, 88, 52. You know, and then that's just the graph that I've been sharing, but I just added the 3%.
And again, that's on top of the thousands of dollars they're already spending, paying.
This is a compounding number, correct? Okay, so last time that we met, a month ago, I briefly discussed the 23-24 budget. You know, what do I see next year, you know, after we get through this budget in June here? What are we looking potentially? You know, our medical insurance, right, where we still only have 4 months of data with that. Transportation, fuel surcharges, you know. Salary increases between 3 to 5% depending on the position that you have within our district. Cyber school tuition, I'm hoping to stand here, you know, next time this year that number went down based upon, you know, administration and making phone calls and getting these the students back here in our district. Special education.
When would that have to happen for us to see that? Is that, I mean, is the goal to have that happen prior to September?
Yeah, I know that we're working on the list.
We're gonna reach out to everybody who's on those and try to get them back for school in September. That's the summer plan.
What potentially, what's our cyber school expense budgeted for next year?
Cyber school. It's broken down into 2 categories: regular ed and special ed. I don't know off the top of my head.
So,
It's pretty significant. It's under $1 million, but it's pretty significant.
so if we just used $1 million and we said our expectation to sell Crestwood education to these students, can we set a goal of 10%? Can we set a goal of 15%? I mean, what are we realistically looking at that would target the real? If you don't have a goal and don't set it, you never achieve it. So if we're saying we pay $1 million to outside cyber school, what's our target? Are we looking at 10%? Try and bring 10% of those students back? Is that realistic? Is 5% realistic?
It would be dependent on the reasons why they're not here. I mean, when I reach out to them, or we reach out to them and find out, is it a carryover from COVID? Is it a situation where they were in cybers or charges before COVID even hit because of programming or things like that? So that you'd have to feel that out. I think you're going to have some people, now that normalcy is back a little bit, you might have some of that naturally coming back. But until we have the conversation, other people might know the kids better than I do. But I need to learn them over the summer. I would like to say as high of a percentage as we can, but I don't want to tie myself to a number and then you're going to come back and go, well, Vito, you said 50% and it's 0.1%. But we're gonna reach out to everybody.
How many are in how many students are in out of?
Not in Crestwood cyber?
Mm-hmm.
John, what's the number we have?
Right now, we have 77 in private cyber and Bear Creek Charter combined,
Okay.
and we have 141 in our
In our-
Crestwood Cyber Academy. So our normal, on a normal year in private cyber, we have between 35 and 40. So we're considerably higher, which would make us believe that it's a carryover from COVID. So realistically, I would think we could get back probably 15 or 20 of those kids. And if we bring them back to the district, it's 100% saving. If we bring them back and put them in our cyber, it's about a $7,000 savings per kid. So.
I think I agree on goals, but the problem is Bob talked about this several years ago and had the same thoughts, but again, between the pandemic, the masking, everything else, certainly a percentage would be critical in terms of the return on revenue, but I think it's the interpersonal contact that's only going to make those decisions. Maybe we can have a better sense midsummer I don't think anybody's dying to have a July board meeting, but it'd be nice to know by the end of July
Yeah.
how many are returning or hoping to return.
We do have a list going in a marketing strategy, like for
Right.
ourselves as a team, so like that's already a project that we're working on.
Yeah, I mean, it's some
Getting
kids that are out
information
for
back.
if they're out for a very specific reason that we can't accommodate, whether it's emotional or whatever, those are things that maybe we can't adjust. But I think what our administration has done with the cyber program, if they just want to be cyber, I would hope that they consider Crestwood and the quality of what we're presenting.
And we have that
77.
survey now, right? We're gonna send that survey out now to see, maybe people have already made up their mind that they are coming back. So we're trying to get that hard number of who are the ones we need to try to, market, to convince to come back, and there might be people that already decided that. So we're trying to find that out now. John?
Yeah, I mean, just for like round number purposes, if we didn't develop the Crestwood Cyber Academy and all of those students went to private cyber, we'd be between 900,000 and another million.
Yeah.
Just the savings on keeping them in our academy, which those 141 kids, it seems like a lot, but it's a savings actually from what our expenditure would be, because private cybers, it's our per pupil expenditure, which is about $9,400, $9,500, and we only pay $2,400 per kid for our cyber, so it is a considerable savings.
So it sounds like it's almost gotten twofold. It's like, one, can we bring you back in person, but if we can't,
Can we bring you back to
can
ours?
we bring you back to ours?
Exactly.
So it's almost
Yes.
A and then B, right?
It's hard because
Yeah,
some
okay.
of them probably found that they liked cyber and it's working for them, so,
Right.
we may lose those kids because it's working for them, so.
And then you gotta wonder if there's a way we can make our cyber some bonus to being in our cyber versus.
Well, yeah, I mean, our biggest selling point is they get a Crestwood diploma.
Okay.
That's the biggest thing.
And the other problem we have is the outside cyber companies, for lack of a better word, rather than school, but they use basically taxpayer money to go out and recruit kids out of our school, and then they don't really need to use the entire chunk of money per kid that we have to pay, and then they use the extra money to do some extra things that maybe attract more people that we'd be able to do if we weren't paying out cyber costs. So it's this vicious cycle that we're gonna try to slowly wean back.
So with the marketing plan, do we have like some highlights for Crestwood besides the Crestwood diploma and the Crestwood teacher? Like, we're gonna invite you to come to our programming. If we have a field day, we want you to come in. If we have, almost like a pizza day for them, or like some of those experiences that those bigger cyber schools really sell themselves to our kids on.
Yeah, I mean,
Now, just I think this is where those interpersonal phone calls have been part of recruiting back from cyber before in previous district. Those interpersonal phone calls you're gonna get the meat and potatoes of why people are choosing that over and then finding a common theme and going after it once we have those discussions with families, I think. But we did talk in our admin meeting about, using the cyber cafe that we have here as more of, okay, we're bringing you back, we're gonna show you a little bit of the Crestwood experience, we'll get some baselines on you, find out where you're functioning in reading and math, let you meet your team, your guidance counselor, do some scheduling, that kind of thing. So repurposing space we already have here to try and bring our families to us.
Okay.
I just want to make a point, and especially because this is a public meeting, we have one newspaper writer here, and in generally speaking, like, you'd love that to be a focal point instead of things like 8 tax increases in 7 years. I don't even know how that got documented in the newspaper article. So then we have some people in the community that, if you don't read larger newspapers or publications about the extraordinary cost that this district is saddled with for these 77 kids, the spin would be Crestwood's a quality place. This is where a lot of the money's being lost in the community. It's not based on exorbitant salaries or wild spending. And again, that would be a much better article for people who only read one newspaper and then they get quotes like 8 tax increase in 7 years. It doesn't even make sense. So it's not just our marketing thing, but it's about the documentation in local media about some of the extraordinary costs, and cyber and the unregulated, unaudited cyber and charter are one of our largest costs. It's that simple. So again, feeling a positive thing about why we're all here and why all of our teachers are here and the students that love Crestwood, I mean, reaching to those families personally, but also in general in the public to say, the Crestwood education is far superior to what these other programs are. They just happen to have more of our tax dollars to market it and give these families stuff as an incentive to go to those programs. It's so disingenuous in our state, it has it so unregulated, but then again, locally, we take the heat from individuals who think we're just spending and wasting money. So again, some part of it, because we only have a couple people from the public here, it'd be nice if that was documented more than 8th tax increase in 7 years. I still don't know how that could happen. But anyway, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to take away from your presentation.
But that is facts, though. We have had that many tax increases.
Eight tax increases in 7 years? How
No,
could you
it's
tax?
it's 8 and 9 years.
It says 8 and 7 years in the newspaper. Then you have people repeating that in emails to us, like the uncontrolled spending of the board and stuff. It's ridiculous.
Well,
So
we have
that-
been spending a lot. There's no denying our spending.
But so is every other public school district in the state. If you look at this, it doesn't even make sense. But people use that as if we did a double tax increase in 1 year that none of us are even aware of. John, I mean that's the
No,
reality.
I see now. I read that as a typo, right? It's 8 and 9 years.
I don't know. I've had some unusual typos repeated to me personally about why we're so far out of control in spending. So
we do spend a lot.
again, every public school district spends a lot of
So,
money.
on these cyber schools, can we go out and attract outside district people to our cyber school for a Crestwood diploma?
I don't think anyone who doesn't live within our district could qualify for a Crestwood.
Right.
Well,
Well,
we
they
could
could,
do,
but
though.
they'd have to pay an audit.
They'd have to
just
pay
gonna
that.
say,
You'd have
right,
to-
they could, but.
Which we don't usually, bring in outside tuition students.
But what we could do is, because charter cyber school is a problem for all our school districts in our area, we could reach out to the other superintendents and say, listen, why don't we get together, and if we are gonna do experiences, because you're not gonna get all 141 kids to come to an
No way.
experience, but if you could do it collectively as almost an area, then you might get more people, you
I
might
agree.
attract more people, and you can kind of pool your money for your experiences together rather than trying to do it all on our own.
Right.
There might be some sort
Like
of
a
a
regionalization of, like pulling resources.
a collaboration. That way, if they're doing something that is actually working,
Could you
that-
find out also the number from, at least in proximity, the districts that surround us, in terms of the number of kids that they have outside the district? I mean, if nothing else, it's information, it's an opportunity to discuss. I think it's a great idea.
So if we took students into our cyber from outside our district, wouldn't their home district have to pay us just like we have to pay private cybers?
Well, if we would take somebody who lives outside the district into our district, someone has to pay the tuition. So whether it's if it's private, the parents, or if you're gonna go, I don't even know how that would work, district to district, but someone would have to pay.
Yeah.
They wouldn't come for free.
But it also wouldn't be an extraordinarily exorbitant cost that has no constraints and no audit. You know what I mean? Like a traditional um, charter program.
But again, those things too, some districts, early in the process of this, got to be known as cyber districts. There was a school district, Seneca Valley, I think out of Western PA, where districts from the east side of the state were using their services to service their cyber kids. Because they had such a large district, they had so many of their own kids that did it, they created this gigantic cyber county. So you had that, but then you're talking, if you're gonna have numbers blow up, now you need more personnel to
Right.
service those kids.
Right.
And then you can't control, then how do you stop it?
Right.
So that's, if you're gonna look towards that, you'd have to really know what you're gonna manage.
Did you wanna say something?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I mean, as far as taking kids in from other districts, we're not actually an official cyber charter school recognized by the state. There's only 14 of them in the entire state of Pennsylvania. We're actually a cyber academy, but they're still Crestwood students. So I don't know that we'd be legally allowed to take anyone else from another district.
I don't even know if you can do that.
There's only 14 recognized in the state that are approved. So-
And most districts operate their own cyber schools
Right.
at this point.
Something.
So, back to 23-24, some influxes or infusions, with our revenues for 23-24. Right now, we have in our budget for 22-23 a sale of a property. Next budget, we're not going to have that unless someone tells me they were property we didn't know. So we are gonna have, and that's $250,000. The tax lien sales, that's another one-time infusion that we have in our 22-23 budget. We will reduce it. It's just, we won't lose it completely. We will reduce it. Like I mentioned earlier, debt service payments actually gonna increase. And the really unknown is the COVID-19 money. So we are starting to get ESSER 3 now. Something that was not projected in this 21-22 budget. We're actually getting some of the ESSER 3. So potentially in 23-24, I'll have a better idea of how much money is actually left to be, given to the district.
So the money we're gaining now would be less money we're getting
That is
in
correct.
the out years.
Correct, yeah.
So Natasha, rolling that all together, it looks like about $2.5 to $3 million.
Yeah, so if I had to predict what I think 23-24, I would say where I started in April with 2.4 negative and 2.8 negative, I think is where we're going to be next year. Collectively, through administration and the board, the superintendent, we've done a great job pulling our way through this 22-23, but 23-24, we still need to look forward and make some good decisions moving forward with the budget. So here we are. I put it onto one sheet for you. There's a 4.2%. So with the expenditures minus the revenues, budget deficit is 72,000. 3% again goes budget deficits 326,657, and at a 2.4, 454,409 as your budget deficit. So again, just down here, the final budget adoption is June 23rd, so next Thursday this will be put forward to the board. And I'm going to give you my last sales pitch to the board. So I am standing here to you today, not pleading, but I think it would be best if I gave you my recommendation. You guys are going to discuss it with the committee, agenda now. But I am recommending the same recommendation I did for the proposed, which is a 4.2% increase. My recommendation is to do that based upon my job duty here is to present to you all of the considerations. We've done a great job collectively to reduce the budget, whether it was reducing operating expenditures, whether it was increasing revenues. Collectively, I think we've come a long way together, and I still think a 4.2 is necessary. And by doing that, we're continuing to provide our students, our staff, our community with the best Crestwood experience that they can have. And I believe a 4.2 is necessary for the board to consider. And again, I'm going to make that one correction that we need to make on that, and I will have this on the district website. Whether it's not tomorrow, it'll be up by then.
Thank you.
Okay.
Going back to that 250 reduction from the proposed final budget.
Yes.
So we basically took on more expenditures than what you documented here, because the math doesn't add up to me.
So the athletic services that we talked about in the budget, we didn't have enough. We were already over budget in 21-22. So even though we're saving 60, we didn't have 60 into the budget.
What did we have in the budget?
$11,000 in the budget.
So technically, we're saving 11 grand.
And I think, John, we have an administrator who's leaving, and that just happened in the last week or two. And with anyone, any professional staff leaves the district, there's always end of the contract, I don't know if you want to call them buyouts, but there's vacation time and sick time and things of that nature, and their early retirement incentive always at the end of the contract. So all of that prior to this month was not in there, and that I think also added to our deficit.
Thank you for your presentation. Appreciate your recommendations and everything. I'm going to ask the board if there's any questions on any of the items. Obviously, there's a significant amount of items here, 1 through 21. I'll give a minute or two to review those. One was added as recent as yesterday, or 2 of them were added yesterday for the committee. Stacy, are you still there?
Yes, I am.
Okay, just want to make sure.
You know, again, there's a couple items on here that I would highlight. Obviously, we have to fill in the blanks as it relates down under number 5, so that we have options for the board vote next week. I'm gonna make a recommendation that we put 2.4 and 4.2 on there, and then much the same way we voted last year for the budget, is that you're voting in favor of one and against the other, because that is now legal as of last year, I believe, under school law. The tax revenue anticipation note under number 8, I'll point that out as well. This is just another thing where when you don't have a fund balance, we have to, and much like many other businesses or certainly schools, at some point during the year, money has to be borrowed to be able to pay your current bills. And now, as everybody paid attention yesterday, the rates went up again. I mean, it's just having no fund balance or a very low fund balance is always going to cause us and cost us more money. Even if they're marginal things, they're still big things in a budget that we're trying to reduce. So there's another example that we're going to have to pay money to get money to be able to pay all those bills.
But we can't build a fund balance if we keep spending more.
Yeah, I mean, it's this cycle, right? It just keeps, you're right. It's
We gotta curtail what we spend.
Right.
We cannot do it on the revenue
Right.
side. It's gotta be done on the expenditure side.
Right, well, I mean, again, you've been here at least a couple months to see what we're trying to do to reduce, and you know, contracts, they're not gonna get changed. We're not gonna spend less on the bus contract unless we get more revenue, because that contract's in place. Again, labor contracts, et cetera, those are stuff that we have to pay at this point. So, we furloughed employees. I don't think anybody felt good about that last board meeting. And again, but we reduced some costs there. I know there's a lot of other recommendations, both Tony, Natasha, Vito, Barry were discussing and recommending as a possibility for next year to reduce costs, and those things will take time, whether they're shared purchases or whatever else we can do to save money for the district. So, does anybody have any questions on any other agenda items under finance?
Yeah, Joe,
Well, just with the board first, does anybody else?
So, number 16 for speech therapist services, what's that an hour? And is that, ESY, is that during the school year?
So, I can answer that question.
Yeah.
We had a maternity leave, that happened 2 weeks prior to the last date of the school year. It was 4 days of service to ensure that, students at Fairview Elementary did not miss any, therapy. So 4 days of service at $150 an hour.
Oh. Number 19. Is there a number like that?
So,
But that's on there. Oh, I'm sorry, I was looking at the wrong number, my apologies.
the plan, Stephanie comes in on Monday. I'm gonna have her send you all of the agreements so you guys know. But number 19 and number 20 both have to deal with the reverse tax appeal.
Okay.
They are both pending solicitor review, so at this time, without the solicitor putting their stamp of approval on that, but I will share with the board the rough draft of what those look like.
I have a question on number 11. Very happy to see us saving over $12,000. Did we have to give up anything for that savings? Did we maybe gain some liability coverage?
So, thank you for pointing that out. I did promise Joyce Insurance that I would give them a shout out to the board. They not only were able to reduce, our savings, reduce our expenses with it, we were able to receive, school leaders liability and employment practice liability, and they raised our, cyber liability with everything going on. So they not only shopped for the best price, they actually got us some extra, insurance for the district.
Excellent. That's a great deal.
Yeah, I was just at an insurance meeting yesterday. I can tell you healthcare is not getting any savings in any insurance renewals, especially as it relates to risk and exposure. So I don't know how they did it, and again, to your point, as long as we didn't have to drop any coverage or
But that is, it's nice to be able to save some money on the insurance renewal. Any other board member questions? Anybody here? Stacy, Lauren on the phone, any questions? Before we turn over to the public questions?
What are we filling in at 5? I would recommend, if you're gonna put 2, I would recommend the 3 and the 4.2 because of the recent retirement and a couple of added expenses that we did not foresee. But if,
Aren't we saving money with the retirement?
Not the first year.
So we're paying out retirement, but we're not paying out salary.
All the details I can't share at the moment because they're still going through solicitor review, but not with the retirements or severance agreements, not always do they, usually the financial could be for the first year and then we see a reduction the future years.
So are we planning on backfilling the position?
that's executive meeting after this one.
So, and then, item 13 on the CTC, so that's not correct then based on your presentation?
It is, it now includes that.
So it is an increase of $20,000,
It is.
but it's a budget change because we didn't budget.
Budget.
Okay.
You ride the budget.
I'm with Barry on 5. I think the 2 options should be the 3 and the 4.2. And my main reason for that is, and I felt it was the board's agreement that we wanted to balance the taxes and our salaries, but none of us wanted to touch kids and how they were affected. And with 2 things that came up this week, and I know we can't talk about them freely here because it has to do with positions, but I think ending a certain program would be a big mistake. And I think the other position would affect the kids and the teachers. And right now I don't see how we could do that with the 2.4. So not to be cryptic, I'm not, but
Yeah, no, it makes sense.
you know,
And I put together some numbers I shared with the board. John agreed with me, Natasha agreed with me, Tony Reba agreed with me, looking at a deficit next year in the area of $2.5 million. I think we have, you know, if things turn around in the next year somehow, extra money comes in, whatever, you can always lower it next year. But if we're going to sit here next year at this time with a $1 million fund balance and look at a $2.5 million deficit, there's definitely going to be staff cuts and program cuts, which I absolutely do not want to see. A few of us have sat through that before, and it's not good for the district, it's not good for the kids. And because of that number next year, that 2.5, I think we have to come as close as we can to start immediately to fill some of that gap.
I think we should retain the 2.4. And gas prices over $5 a gallon. People are stretched at the grocery store, the gas, every bill they're getting in here. So every little bit needs to be saved. And I think 2.4 is what we had in the preliminary to jump that to 3 and not make further cuts or not look at ways to reduce the rest of the budget sequentially. We're not doing our job if we don't look at that and try and balance that out. People are paying over $100, $85 to $100 to fill up their tank of gas.
but if we lose a program, it might push more people to cyber schools. I mean, and then we're losing even more money.
I don't think we're gonna lose a program.
But
I think
that's my
we
concern,
haven't even
you know.
discussed
I
it.
know,
and
and that's why I said
we're
we're-
basing a agenda item off things we haven't even been able to discuss. And there's ways to do it, it's just people don't wanna take on the added work.
Could we do an ABC? Is that allowed? I'm just saying, out of
But what if
respect
we
for
get
the,
more wind?
just out of the respect for the previous vote, where we all voted for the 2.4, and, you know,
We
there's
didn't
so
all
many.
vote for it.
Huh?
We didn't all vote for it.
Well,
Yeah, I know what you mean.
you know, I
It
just
passed.
mean, it passed,
Right.
just as a,
I have no idea. I don't see any reason why not. I think the problem is, a couple
You're gonna
problems.
split
Number one, there's several problems here. Number one, we could have only 8 board members voting. that could be a problem in and of itself, even if there's only 2 options. Now, if you have a third option and it's legal, what's the majority?
Right, but Robert's rules, isn't it? You vote in order.
Well, I just remember, but I don't know if our solicitor's on the phone or whatever, but I don't remember. Was it you were voting for one or against the other, for one and against the other, or did the one got voted on?
That was
I
it.
can't recall
Right,
which
it's
was
the ones once got voted on, when
Right.
once approved,
Right.
then the others are voted, are
So
basically automatic.
then
it's
hypothetically,
A, B, C.
right.
You vote on A, then you vote on B, C. You could go A through Z,
I guess.
and the first one that's
As soon as
approved.
one passes, the rest falls.
Right, but I don't remember exactly. So maybe we could do this. I don't know. I guess we could check on that to make sure, because it's got to be put up for the final agenda. But we have until the beginning of next week to do that. So maybe through executive session, we talk about these, if there's programs affected or whatever. I mean, it's going to be put out there publicly anyway before the meeting. I would have no problem putting 3 options up there, but if we could do it and then do the vote that way.
And then just put them in the order
Right.
that you would like them.
Yeah, I don't know what that order is.
Should
though.
start with
I'm
what was
afraid legally
approved.
that's, or I guess you.
Yeah.
Start with what's approved.
Right. So if there's no other questions from the board about these agenda items, are there any questions from the public?
Yeah, I think the question's for Vito. The Lehigh Valley Network contract, that good news that we shared tonight, in your opinion, what does that do to the district's ability to sell advertising to other places? I know that's something we've talked about a lot. Is there more revenue opportunities there? Do we think, because that's what Lehigh Valley Network's getting back, right, advertising? So do you think we'll still be able to get advertising elsewhere too, or do you think that's put to bed now?
No, there are certain, I reached out to a couple of firms actually that specialize in school marketing outside southeastern PA, and they've gotten back to us a little bit, and we could further, they can come in and do everything for you, and then they can take percentage, you get 70-30, something like that. They'll come in and be a consultant for you and help you to market, not just hitting you local people, but try to get bigger corporations. So that's what they do for a living. And then there's a couple independent people from the Valley that I've reached out to that have their own marketing and community, firms, and they've started into school branding and that. So I have a couple meetings set with those people to try. That's the whole idea.
Okay, so we still have another opportunity.
Yeah, and we're not just locked in just there, because when we talk, it's not mandated, like finite areas, like only there and non-compete, things like that. They have what they have, but it gives us the opportunity to get other things. And there's opportunities out there. People want their names, and we have to look at every way to get revenue. We have a limited way to get revenue, but sponsorship is one key way, and it's really an untapped resource, especially with everything going on.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay, you might remember, I think one of the first things I requested when I joined the board was with that beautiful marquee out there, just having ads on there. It could be one every 10th rotation, hypothetically. I remember a former board member said we need this lengthy policy and whatever, and we really never went anywhere with it. No one else has a policy on that stuff. So by bogging us down with maybe something that's unnecessary, certainly we'd have guidelines, but anyway, we got no revenue from that. All the companies that are advertising for jobs, several businesses reached out to me that are in the industrial park, said, I'd rather give the money to Crestwood and put it on that marquee, even if it was a job posting, you know what I mean? I don't know, I don't remember what the business was, rather than pay for signs and stick them in yards and on billboards and stuff. So that's another possible revenue item that I think we have to explore.
And that sign, I believe I was told today, has full video capability, and it's pretty high quality.
Yeah.
So there's some stuff we
Again,
can,
not to bog all, because again, it's our pride of our district, but if someone's helping to give us revenue, and once every, I don't know, Damien, what the rotation is on that, but I thought that was a wonderful, quick revenue idea.
I can slip, as you make the slides, you can put them in anywhere on the
Yeah,
slides you want, so.
Right, every 5th message is a sponsor or a donor. Now, obviously, we would have to have something in play, in writing, so that if a type of business or inappropriate,
There's a
we can-
policy on that.
Yeah,
In the policy.
but a full policy, we couldn't find a policy in any other district, and we just never did anything with it then. So, anyway, but again, new revenue ideas, there's just another one. And that sign was free because of the sponsor. So, why not get revenue from it? Just some thoughts. Any other question on agenda items? There's a lot of stuff here.
Item 18, is that an additional benefit we're adding?
Yeah, that, and, not gonna discuss that, we can in executive, because that has not been finalized. In fact, about 10 minutes before came up, I got the review from the solicitor, and it will go out to the entire board, and we can discuss that. And that, well, I'm gonna stop.
Yeah. Okay, hearing no more questions, so I have a motion to move items 1 through 21. Do I have a motion to move those to the board meeting next week?
Motion.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Hearing no opposition. And discussion items, obviously we had our great budget presentation. If there's no other items for the finance committee, we'll make an adjournment.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Human Resources, Mrs. Bidwell.
Roll call, Mr. Brosman,
Here?
Mr. Swain. 2 members present. I make a motion to approve the minutes of May 12th, 2022. I so move.
Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so we have 7 items for the agenda. I'll let everybody look over it. Any questions from the committee? I have one. These, number 1, A and B. Did we have to put substitutes in place for these? Whether they were support staff or?
So, no.
No. Any questions from the board?
I don't have any questions.
Any questions from the public?
I have a question. Kim Bronstein, Mountaintop, Pine Street. Under 1A and B, what exactly are those initials stand for the unpaid leave? And then number 3, 4, and 5, will you be replacing those people that are leaving?
So the unpaid leave is the
I can answer that.
initials for
Yes.
this.
It's a code to protect the employee, but it's a code for the employee. So I can't really go into what the code stands for, because then I would be telling you who the individuals are, but it's an employee code.
Okay. What was the reason for the unpaid leave? Are you
I
able to-
can't share that.
You can't share that. And then 3, 4, and 5, will those positions be, will they be replaced, those people?
I can answer number 3. It has been posted. It's on our district website. The posting closes on the 18th. 4 is, can't really discuss that at the moment. And number 5, we are anticipating on posting that position on Monday.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none. We have no open discussion items. Move to adjourn. Human resources.
Thank you. Policy, Mr. Macri.
Roll call, Mrs. Campbell,
Here.
Mrs. McCurdy,
Here.
all present. I'd like a motion to approve the minutes from May 12th committee meeting.
Motion.
Second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Carries. We'll be looking to move item 1, items A, first reading, A, second reading, and A through D, third reading, and adopt to the board meeting agenda. Are there any board questions?
Not on here. Number 246, wellness, will that be ready to go by the start of the school year? I know it's still going through some revisions.
I think I'm just waiting for Vito to look it over as far as the wellness committee or
Yeah, well,
the
we should,
term,
we
I
should.
don't know,
be
yeah,
okay.
so that's the only thing we're waiting on. So everything else is
But that,
checked and done.
that should be a one reading and adopt.
It could
For
be
the
one,
wellness, yeah,
so,
that should be.
so we may be able to get that on next week, or do you?
Yeah, I'll make sure that everything's there, but I think
There
we
were
should.
just a lot of
Sure.
listening,
Yeah,
I didn't
yeah.
know how
Yeah,
detailed you know, so
Yeah.
that's, I'd rather,
We should be
yeah.
okay.
Okay.
What are we changing to public attendance at school meetings? Is this the conduct?
No, I thought it was how we're allowing the
Student.
students to come without paying.
Okay.
That was,
They proposed that.
that was my
in the spring.
understanding, is that, yeah, okay.
So, yeah, the language is in there, and over the summer, have the student committee work with the administration on the oath or whatever, the behavior part, but,
Which
it
would
is
be,
allowed.
end up in the handbook, correct?
And it will be in the handbook, yes?
Is it an ID thing or is it just,
I think they decided we were gonna give out tickets, I thought that
Yeah,
was the final
tickets will be
decision.
given out day of the event, and it's not just sports, it could be the play or whatever. And as long as the code of conduct is followed, those students will be admitted free. Should there be discipline problems, they would be scratched from the list. Not necessarily not allowed at the events, but they would have to pay.
So again, that would all be handled by the student government, the passing out of the tickets and all that. Right.
There were issues with the IDs, I can't remember now. I can't remember, yeah, there
But
was
there
something
were.
about the phone controls.
Any public questions?
How are the metal detectors, going? How's the training going? I know we can't,
Well,
the details we can't
Yeah, I
get
know,
into, but how?
I could talk to you about
Yeah.
that. Once the policy is enacted and we develop the exact procedures, what we're gonna do with our security and admin, then I'll, but I don't wanna say it publicly.
Okay, yeah, no, I didn't want details, just kinda curious how it was going.
Again, the target on that is to have first reading. Well, this is actually,
That was
This
the
should
this
be
should
the
be our
second.
second
This-
reading.
I
Our
was
first-
gonna
This
say,
should be our
I thought
second
this was the
reading.
second
Yeah, our
It is
first
the
one was
second
done at the
reading.
last board meeting, so this is
And-
actually second
Right.
reading.
Third reading and adopt tentatively for August.
Yeah.
So we will amend that to say second reading.
Yes.
Motion to move these to the agenda,
Motion?
second?
Mr. McCurdy? I'll second.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Motion adjourned? All in favor of adjournment?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Thank you.
Academic programs, Ms. Campbell.
Thank you. Roll call, Ms. McCurdy?
Here.
Ms. Spaff? I don't think she's present. First, I'm looking to to approve the minutes of the May 12th, Programs Committee meeting. I so move, if I could have a second.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
I have one item on the agenda to move to the board meeting next week, and it is consideration approval of the Project Race field trip. That's number 1A. So are there any questions from the board on this item? Any questions from the public on this item? Okay, then I make a motion to move it to the board meeting. I'll make a motion if I could have a second.
Second.
Second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Now, I know I do have some questions from the committee, but I also know Ms. Foster has a presentation. If you want to do that first, because you might even answer
Thank you.
some questions in it.
This is short. I promise. So annually, we receive funding from the federal government under Titles 1, 2, 3, and 4. Title 4 has a new component that requires conversations with public and public input regarding the spending of a portion of our Title 4 funding. This particular portion is $37,691 that is specifically targeted towards student support and academic enrichment. So the three specific areas that are delineated in the federal program grant are well-rounded education, and that's a 20% mandate of that $39,000. The second is safe and healthy students, which is also a 20% mandate, and then the remainder is split in two different sections. One is a set aside that is specifically directed toward our non-public schools, which are also serviced by this money. It's our responsibility to support students in our non-public schools, and that would be St. Jude in our area. And then the technology component is also a requirement. So in our admin conversations and our conversations with our stakeholders in our elementary schools, our discussions were what's the most appropriate use of this funds to make a difference for students in that area of student support and academic enrichment. So two big pieces jumped out as things that we know we need to do a stronger, more concerted effort, K-12. The first is college and career readiness guidance, K-12. We have a solid program, 7 to 12 right now. It needs to become stronger in our elementary grades. This funding would allow us to use, actually I see a typo there, Zello actually, and this trade brand is XELLO, not ZELLO, my apologies. Autocorrect sometimes gets you. So the software has career development and career exploration activities that are grade level appropriate as young as 3rd grade. So we'll start with grades 3, 4, 5, and 6 in the elementary grades new this year using these very specifically designed activities that help kids to say, test drive, this is what an electrician does, this is what the mailman does, at a grade level appropriate development. The nice part of this program is that it augments what junior achievement does. It also augments the BizTown experiences that we've traditionally done in 5th grade, and it helps keep track of the students' performance and students' career portfolio over time. So from grade 3 through 12, they will develop and add to their own personal portfolio of, I thought when I was in 3rd grade I wanted to be a fireman. By the time I get to 6th grade, I realized that I can't wear that heavy gear all the time, so maybe I want to be an EMT, still supporting kids. And now by the time I'm a sophomore in high school, I want to go further than be an EMT. I want to be a paramedic and take it up a notch. So that helps the kid hone in their skills and hone in their target about what do I want to do beyond high school. So that's this thought. It seemed to fit well with our mission values of our district, as well as what kids need to know and do before they leave here.
How does that tie into helping them select classes here offered at Crestwood?
Two things. If they're going down the medical track, then we're going to want to have more strong exposure in life skills and the life science and the.
But does this point out to them that track?
Yes. Yes. That's part of the software. Is like if you're interested in the medical field, you want to make sure that you do well in life science in 7th grade. You want to really be strong in bio in 9th grade. You want to look at bio 2 and chemistry as you continue forth, because even though chemistry is about, well, in my word, reactions, the chemistry really is important in the biology, in the medical field.
But the program will give them that guidance?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. Safe and healthy students is right here in our face. We know that we need to continue to support students in their healthy development. So drug and violence prevention in our DARE programs in the elementary school. We have the benefit of local law enforcement coming to our both elementary schools to provide the DARE program. We also know that we need to grow our school-wide positive behavior support systems and revamp those and rebuild that system that was starting before COVID. Things got sidelined. We need to build that back. So that requires and is a very, very appropriate use of this funding. And then within the technology piece, students take, in our Title I program, take reading assessments and math assessments and use those assessments, take them through touchscreen devices. We've used iPads for a very, 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 very long time, and they've reached the end of their life. We can use this funding to replace those iPads without it coming out of district funds. So that's our thought process around how to provide supports for our students. This grant will go to the federal government by the end of this month as part of the umbrella of the Title I program.
So did you say we were already using the Zello?
7 through 12.
7 through 12.
This is an extension into
Okay.
the
How's
other
it been
grades.
working in 7 through 12?
We've been using this program for several years.
Okay.
The beautiful part is that it ties tightly to the career standards benchmarks that the state government has asked us to connect with.
Okay.
The other piece that's really cool is at the end of their at the end of 11th grade, they're able to present their career portfolio as their graduation project. So in the past, their graduation project has been a hodgepodge of community service events. Now it's truly after high school, this is what I'm going to do and here's why. I tried this, I had this class, I was in this elective, I'm really stellar in math, and now this is what I'm going to do with my math skills. I'm a phenomenal musician, and this is what I'm going to do, and here's why. And here's what I've done in Zello to show it, and here's what I've done outside of Zello. You can add and upload things, documents and evidence. We even had some kids writing their own songs. In fact, there was one presented at graduation. That was part of her portfolio. It was like, that's sweet. So when they go to college, they've already go for those admissions interviews and say, here's why I want to be here. This is why I chose your college. I chose your college because I've tried all of these things. You fit me and I fit you. Let's go.
Is that just a question of the Zello? Is that something that they could have? Is this something that the students could have, like, again, we would say like on their iPhone?
Yeah.
Like, could they log in the way you would like, in other words, if it's just relegated to in the building, when they don't have
Yeah.
time to spend
Yeah,
on that,
right.
but they could take it and do it from
Yeah,
home
it's
and stuff?
web-based.
Okay.
It's web-based. Any
That's
place
great.
that they can log in through their Google SSO,
Yeah.
they can log into Zello.
So from the elementary level, like how often would they do it? When would they do it? Like how?
They're required to complete at least 2 activities per year to meet the state's benchmark. We do a whole lot more than that. In fact, one of the best and strongest points of our elementary school is the connection between what they teach and how it applies to real life. That was one of my favorite parts of being an elementary principal was when we went down to Biztown and connected all of those things that you learn in math class to this is what it looks like to work in a bank, and now's why you needed to know how to do math. So that was the fun parts. So it absolutely connects. And how often will they do it? It's embedded throughout their social studies curriculum, science curriculum. There were times where we were talking about scientists right next to, what's a geologist do? Talking about landforms and mountains and volcanoes. Volcanoes are fun to build. Who studies them? So that's where we got into those career activities. A lot of fun. So short, sweet, but it's an important piece of our little programs that we would like to keep going. Any other questions? All right, thanks. Can I kick this off for you, Amy?
Okay.
Don't touch Amy's spots.
Hey, thank you, Peg. And while you're
Okay. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, no,
There's a
I
sign
just,
you
I
should
didn't mean
raise.
to, and I didn't wanna switch gears, but I was wondering,
To the rest of the people.
end of year benchmarks.
Okay.
So like how we looked and where we at compared to, I know you said mid-year, beginning of the year, we really
wasn't good. Mid-year though, we were seeing some improvement, so I was just curious where.
End of year, I saw really nice growth in the top quartile, which is exactly where we wanted our kids to be. Not in the middle quartile, which is 50% to 75%.
So
The
more
top
kids
perform-
went into the top.
More
quartile.
kids went into the top performance profile. We saw a growth across the board in all content areas that were tested. That would be math, language arts, and reading, in both elementary schools and the secondary campus. The biggest growth was in reading. The second highest growth was in language arts. Math showed strong growth, but not nearly as much as I would like because their initial start was lower. One of the pieces that I know is that we have to continue to work on math. Have to continue. And we're focusing hard, not just in the elementary schools, but now into our middle levels as well, on additional time, additional supports, and a stronger foundation in math.
And then is that, are you guys looking into that for next year then?
Absolutely. We've already been working on the 7th and 8th grade schedule to add a bonus math period for each kid in grade 7 and 8. There's ways to make that function so that kids have more time with a talented teacher focusing on math.
Okay. I'm thrilled to hear they went up. Oh, go ahead, sorry. When will we start seeing the PSSA schools?
PSSAs were due back to the Department of Ed and their testing process by the 3rd week in May. So I would expect probably by the end of June, beginning of July, we'll see PSSA schools.
On the benchmarks, because I know when we were looking at the beginning of the year, and then we were looking at the middle of the year, and there was, I thought a significant number who didn't take them. I mean, in your opinion, and Vito, in your opinion, is that something that should be mandatory?
At the end of the year, they were mandatory for everyone.
They were mandatory for everyone, okay. And are we looking for that next year too?
Yes.
As well?
I'm
Mandatory?
going to
Okay.
speak for you. Sorry.
No, that's good.
I apologize.
Any other questions on benchmarks? Because I just went through your question. And then, I don't know, Mr. Gorham or Mr. Perantoni, I know we had talked a little bit that I had gotten a lot of parent complaints on the bathroom situation up at the high school, and I know
I'll answer it.
Yeah, you had filled me in a little bit, but I didn't know since
Yep.
it was multiple, if you wanted
Yeah,
to
so there's
kind of take
multiple.
it.
I mean,
Yeah.
they weren't. It's not like a lockdown or anything like that. For different reasons, certain bathrooms were locked at certain times. So one was for vandalism. Some things were broken. Some of it was paper towel holders. Some of it was maybe graffiti. So we locked the bathrooms down for that. Scott can answer more on. We had little issues with some bathrooms with some of our pipes, and I locked it down for a while. And vaping. Not that we have a big problem with vaping, but there was one of our bathrooms in back hall that is in the boys' bathroom. A lot of complaints from the other students, so I did lock it down for a short amount of time. So that's pretty much, I mean, same thing, like Mr. Brogna said. Sometimes the word gets flattered out that, well, it's total lockdown. It wasn't. And some of the complaints probably were during cafeteria time, during lunchtime, long lines. We only let a certain amount of kids in the bathroom at one time, safety reasons obviously, and then there'll be a line. So they'll wait in line because you have kids in first hall, part of second hall that will come up to the bathrooms by the office, as well as everybody out of the cafeteria.
Okay. Is the piping situation fixed, or is that something that's
That was just a backup, right?
Yeah, it's fixed for now.
For now, that's what I was wondering.
It's a
okay?
issue we have to address going forward.
Okay.
Again, nothing small ticket when it comes to that. But it is fixed for
Okay,
now.
for
So that
now.
one day we had to shut it down, it was precautionary, so it didn't back up and kids were in there.
But that's what I've heard. I've heard it's like a bigger issue, really. Over.
It is, it's
Yeah.
original 1960 terracotta sewer piping we have going through our courtyards. And unfortunately, as they added on to the school buildings, they blocked them in, so there's no access to get equipment to here unless you bring a crane in and crane that in. And as I'm talking, you can see the dollar signs going up. Stacy's gone through a lot of these type of things with where she works. There are options out there. We keep fixing them as least expensive as we can. There's no easy fix to stop it unless we have it redone. And that's either rerouting around the school, having something done, like I said, trained over and worked in.
Is that being evaluated right now, the reroute?
It is, not dollars and cents, but we're getting companies to see who can do that for us. We've already got back, people said they don't want to touch it. Stacy came up with a few names of companies that we're gonna bring in and see what kind of dollars that they're talking.
And I have one other question, because I know there's talk about putting a dress code in the student handbook. And the one question I had was, because I know right now the kids are not allowed to carry backpacks to and from the classes. And just looking at, and I'm assuming that's for safety reasons? Safety reasons,
Yes.
okay. So, is it possible to make the kids' lives easier if we allowed the clear backpacks to be
Yeah,
carried
we-
past the
could answer
class?
Yeah, we actually talked about that today. And initially, when I put that message out to the community, it was right at the time of the heightened alerts that were going out nationwide. And we went to no backpacks within the building traveling around from class to class. So they were allowed to bring them in. The phase we were looking at was phasing them to clear backpacks with the potential, we haven't got to that point yet. What we want to do was the potential that they can carry them around clear, but we still have the option to say no backpacks at all if we need to go to a heightened security at that point, you know. So, you know, that's something we know we have to get out pretty quickly here because people
Agreed.
start buying things, you know. So we actually did talk about it today, you know, and we're still in discussions, and if we go to the metal detectors randomly and we increase security in other ways, we might still allow the regular backpacks, but they definitely won't be carrying them around.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
So we don't see much of an issue them bringing them in because they go in the lockers. You know what I mean? And if we have the metal detectors, then that's going to be a deterrent itself. But you know, we'll be putting that out very soon.
Okay.
So.
Those are all my questions. I don't know if anyone else on the board has any questions for
Just a
academic?
question on how Keystones went.
Keystones went smoothly. The test results were mailed back to the company by the end of May. Results for them will probably be the end of July. But overall performance felt good from the kids' perspective. In fact, some of them said it was easier than PSSA's. So I like that. That's a good feeling.
Just out of curiosity, those Keystones were what, the second and third week of May?
That's when the state requires them, correct?
Because, you know, it would be nice if that was like the last week of school when the kids are sitting here doing
Absolutely.
Yep.
Agreed.
nothing.
That's the state
Right?
dictates that.
Seniors aren't here.
Yeah.
They don't need
More
to take it,
relaxed.
get them out, more relaxed.
I agree.
And then we actually get more schooling because then they could actually have classes and when they're doing nothing in the last week of school.
Agree completely.
So that's not our choice.
It's not our
Okay.
choice. The state dictates when those testing windows are.
They take suggestions?
Hopefully.
Oh, that would be nice. I'd tell them.
I
something
don't know the
they shouldn't say
logistics
out
of it,
loud.
but wouldn't that be a good last week?
It makes perfect
I
sense.
might tell them they can keep them, but that's okay.
Well,
Probably.
I get that. They might not listen to that. but
No, they won't.
Thanks, but that's all I say.
Yeah, thanks.
Any other questions from the board? How about any questions from the community? Nope. Then I'll make a motion to adjourn the committee.
Thank you. Technology, Mrs. McCurdy.
Thank you, Mr. Boone. Roll call, Mrs. Bibler,
Here.
Mrs. Campbell,
Here.
all present. I make a motion to approve the minutes of the May 12th Technology Committee meeting. I so move. Can I get a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So we do not have anything on the agenda to move to the June 23rd meeting. Is Mr. Blanchard there tonight?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, thank you. We're all looking forward to your update on this bring your own device system.
Thank you, Mrs. McCurdy. So we obviously reviewed the survey. It was sent out multiple times through different platforms, Comet News, direct email, other messaging services that the principals passed out. We got 82 responses. Out of those 82, 45% said they would not bring their own device. 54.9% said they would, so it's 45.1 to 54.9. The other question that was asked was what type of device out of the ones that would bring it would they bring. Looks like 42% said Chromebooks, 35% said Windows, and the other 22% said Apple. The proof is in the pudding, obviously. So when we had the system up for the last, almost maybe 2 months or so, however it's been, we saw on average about 32 kids using it, 10 of which were Windows, 6 were Mac, 6 were Chromebooks, and then 10 were classified as other. Other could just mean that their system isn't processing an actual operating system, so it's probably a mixture of Windows and Mac. So we did see some kids use it. I didn't see any stability issues whatsoever as far as the network went. I saw 1,100 kids try to get on with their phones. They've tried to find ways around it. We were able to kind of tie that down, so that was good. So it didn't really offset the network in any way or expose it. The only piece that had come up by the teachers ran a small survey amongst themselves, because one thing we found after it was up is that over the last few years, the teachers have been building a lot of their assessments, like quizzes and small tests that they do in class. They've been using Google Forms. Google Form has a feature which allows them to lock the form. So when they give them the quiz, the kids can't open an alternate tab, they can't browse the internet, they can't do anything. The problem they ran into was that if they lock the form, then any kid that doesn't have a organized or deployed device by us, they can't access the form. So Google has a very restricted requirement on turning that lock mode on, so they have to turn the lock mode off. Most of them that were surveyed, they were just asked some questions regarding if they use the Google Forms. Over 89% of the staff does. Would they? How would they feel? Would they continue to use Google Forms if the BYOD initiative were to come out? If the lock mode couldn't work, and it looks like, let's see, they would continue to use it anyways. I think some of the things that came up, it looks like 96% of the teachers just figured they would probably go pencil and paper for the students that couldn't use the device. Because if you figure, at least based on the numbers we have now with approximately 32 kids, stretched across the entire 7 through 12, you might have one kid in your class that has their own device. So for that one student, they would just take the quiz on paper. It would not be a lot of printing, obviously, and then the rest continue to use the Google, the Chromebook. So that's about the best news I have. I didn't see anything problematic with them doing anything they shouldn't. They tried to find some ways around it, but nothing mischievous. And again, for the ones that did have it so far, it seemed to go. I don't know it was record-breaking numbers as far as cost and expense, Mr. Macri, but it definitely, it's not hurting leaving it up. It's not,
So how was it advertised to the students that it was available?
So the first one was, I believe, I don't want to put him in the spot, Mr. Gorham sent out a message through the internal system and the emails. And then, obviously, once the word gets out there, that spreads like wildfire. That's probably, it's like,
That would explain the 1,100 phones.
Yes, right, exactly. So it's,
I will say my son brought his device in to use it, and he only lasted a day because he actually said it kept trying, you would probably understand talking to him better than I'm being an in-between, but he said his computer kept using our internet, saying it was almost like trying to spy on him. He said he was having some issues with that, and he gave up in a day, and he just went back to the Chromebook.
So his personal security was kicking out.
Probably.
Yes.
Probably.
The high schools.
Right, so they could have, parents could have loaded some type of firewall or something on the machine, virus protection that might be.
It might be a virus protection.
Right, because you got our internet, is making him go through a portal. It's making, so it might have flagged some of that. I had a couple.
Just as feedback, so
Yeah.
after he's like, oh, it wasn't worth it. I had to keep.
I had a couple kids
around,
too.
So then he went back to the Chromebook.
Sure, and because when we had that massive influx of phones at the beginning of the year, that was kind of, I had to knock them off in order to keep them, keep it stable. And I think some of their accounts got blocked. So I found with a few students that brought those devices in the beginning of the year, their device got blocked because they might have not been a phone, it might have been a personal device. So I had a few of those kids come to me, and it was just a matter of unblocking that device, and they were good. So. I only saw 2 kids that came to me that had an issue, but that's good to know. At least it's something to watch. But that's what I have on that.
Did the test that week affect obviously we know, especially when so much education went remote for that year plus, did it affect any teachers' access? I had several teachers that mentioned, and I don't know if it was when this transition took place, that they had stuff online, then all of a sudden they couldn't access. You mentioned the Google testing, but I'm saying general education content. That said that they got knocked off because of this. Now, whether it's true or not, I don't know.
Because of the BYOD? The only way that would happen would be if a staff member, I think some staff might have tried to connect to the BYOD, because remember, anybody can connect to that with their device, and that is a locked down kind of internet. It gives enough flow, but if a teacher, let's say, tried to do it on their phone, and they didn't go on the guest network and switch to the BYOD, they may be restricted on that side where they need to get back to the guest or get on, now if it's their school issued device, that shouldn't happen at all because that auto triggers to the staff system, so that's built into that device. But I could see that happening maybe on a personal device they're bringing into the building if they were logging in. I saw a few teachers because their names come up. I did see a few teachers on the BYOD. Nothing against it, sure, by all means. But if they're on it, there's a possibility something might have got blocked.
Right.
Don't forget, I think it was the same week we rolled out the BYOD, the IU was having connection issues
So there were
in
two separate things
conjunction.
that went at the same
So
time.
it
Could've been all of
probably
that.
looked like we released it and then nobody could get on the internet, but it's split.
When it rains, it pours. So.
Someone said to me, it's our fault, the board, because we allowed this to happen. And I said, of course.
Yeah.
everybody's
Well,
our
right.
fault.
Yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate you clarifying that.
Any other questions for me regarding anything else? Okay. All right, Mr. McCurdy.
I have one question.
Sure.
You keep records, through the course of the year, how many MacBooks were repaired, screen repairs? How many were
Oh, you mean the
replacements?
Chromebooks?
Yeah, Chromebooks.
Yeah, we do have records based on our fleet system where we put the pairs in. I haven't calculated them in full yet. We're actually still fixing some from the seniors and some other stuff, but I know the last tally I did on the board, which was probably I did on a market board maybe 2 months ago. We had about 20,000 in repairs. So that number is the cost of monies that would come in. So if the average repair is $100, you can kind of reverse math that a little bit.
So that would be a screen was cracked or a board replacement.
Yeah, and a lot of the small stuff, we can swap them in Frankenstein. Mostly it's screen repairs because we had very little, I lost the device completely or threw it into the river situation. So most of it was all Then obviously our warranty company, that's more on their end, but I was going to call them to see how much they'll let me know because again, that contract is between the parent and them. But just to give me, we know what we send out, but I was going to try to get from them now that the year's closed to see what was the total number of warranties that went out to them. And I know it was pretty significant. I mean,
They have that. I actually think we may be able to pull that from their actual website. I think they give us a claim center area. We could probably export that data out and get an exact this many went out.
I mean, what would you say? Probably 200? More?
Yeah, last time I looked at it, which was months ago, we were getting close to 100. So
Okay.
I'm certain.
So maybe
it's over
150.
that.
So 100 warranty, but we repaired 200 in-house.
Yeah. Yeah, I think when we open the warranty portal again, I think there'll be a high influx of warranties. Because again, at the $40, that one repair, that screen repair of $100 is almost 3 screens at 40. So I think because we've had parents ask if the portal will reopen, and again, like most insurance, you have to buy it at the opening period. So we'd like to do that again at the beginning of the school year, open that portal up for a month, and let those parents re-sign up. So I think we'll see an influx on the number, which would then lower that cost on the parent, obviously lower cost of in-house repairs.
Yeah, I had lost track of the amount of people that after they had paid for a repair said, can I still sign up for that warranty? So there's definitely people looking forward to that opening.
Okay, Mrs. McCurdy, back to you.
Are there no other questions? Thank you, Mr. Blanchard.
You're welcome.
And is there any no questions from the community? Okay. I move to adjourn the technology committee meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Positive behavior intervention, Mrs. Bibla.
Roll call, Mrs. Stagg, Ms. Campbell.
Here.
Make a motion to approve the minutes of May 12th, 2022. I so move.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We have no agenda items, but we do have an open discussion, follow-up from our last agenda meeting, for new programs for the school.
Yeah, as was brought up in the federal programs, we're gonna use Title IV to expand school-wide positive behavior support K to 12. Initially, I think one of the elementary schools is doing something, what is that?
On track.
On track. And so we want to either expand that to both buildings, or there's other programs out there that I've used in other districts, whatnot, at the secondary level as well. So talking to all the administrators at our last meeting, that's something we want to do consistently with Fidelity K to 12. And then circling back to the Rachel's Challenge, that money, I guess pre-COVID, you guys had looked towards that. The money was never allocated. It was going to come out of Title IV at that time, but never was paid for. So it's not like something we paid for and didn't get. And with the Venum program that we have that started before I got here, there'll be a lot of redundancy with some of the programming there and Rachel's Challenge. So rather than spending another $10,000 on something we already started, we want to kind of see that through. Because the worst thing you can do in those situations is kind of scattershot and have 7 programs going on at one time. We'd rather focus on 1 or 2 and really commit to it. And so that's kind of the plan we're going with.
So what value did you see out of that Zenon program?
I don't know much about it. It came on before I got here.
Yep, so that started later in the school year, and we sent student ambassadors for training for that. There are actually teachers that are in charge and oversee that program. One of the things to Rachel's Challenge is the idea of spreading unity and inclusivity and combating negative school climate, which we also have through our unified track and field team that you saw compete over the last couple seasons also has a club portion in addition to it. So all of our members that are part of the team are also part of the club. So during activity days, they work together to find a way to spread that message of inclusivity.
So that's
through
all
our
part
hallways.
of Rachel's Challenge program.
So that is our unified track and field. So we have 2 clubs currently right now that spread the same message. So Rachel's Challenge would essentially be a third adding to it. So I can really speak to the unified club. I know the teachers that oversee Avita, but that was definitely a later developing club. So I would say we probably have more data on the success of it for next year.
And the Education Foundation recently approved a grant from the foundation to the Avitum Club to continue their mission.
I believe they're still in the training phase is what, for the students. There's a lot of training that goes into that.
That Education Foundation is wonderful.
It's very positive.
We're spreading the word again today.
Any other questions from the board? Any from the public? Seeing none. Close positive behavior.
Thank you. Physical plant and grounds, Mrs. Haddix.
Good evening. Roll call, Mr. Grosvenor,
Here.
Mr. Macri.
Here.
I will be seeking approval of the minutes of the May 12, 2022 Physical Plant and Grounds Committee meeting. I so move.
Second.
I have nothing on tonight's agenda to move for the board meeting for next Thursday. Is there any questions or comments from the board?
Can we get an update on where we are
Is
with
there any
the,
questions or?
yeah, on the school facade?
I'm sorry.
I know we went and had did evaluate it. Have we gotten
So
the
there
next
was,
step?
yeah, there's a couple
Sorry,
items.
we had an engineering firm come in and review bids to make sure that everything was included in the bids. What we're going to do is based on some of what was lacking is we're getting another specification written and we're going out to rebid the work.
Stacy, do you know the timeline? We're gonna have that back and then bid.
I don't. I know that Tony is working on that. The expectation is that the work still be done before the start of the school year.
I've got a few questions. The repairing of the stage on the secondary campus. Scott, and where are we on the paving over at Rice?
Yeah, with I was gonna ask that question myself, with the stage repair. We have, we had our stage inspected and we got recommendations from the company that prioritized what needs to be done to our staging equipment. Priority one, which should be done in year one, comes over the price tag of $20,000, which would normally the state would require us to put that out to public bid for the work to be done. I can't just go out and get 3 bids and have the work done. The state says unless it's done through a CoStar's vendor, which the company that came in and did the inspection is, the state vets them out and approves them to be a CoStar vendor, which means we would not have to put it out to public bid. It's kind of a catch-22 here. Do we spend the money to put it out to public bid? I don't know what it would cost us, Natasha, to put out to public bid. I have found out there's not a lot of companies, especially locally, that do this specific rigging work for stages. We have talked to Mountaintop Productions, who are big in the area and they're worldwide. They can't help us with our specific needs, but they said we need to go to a company like the one who came in. So our option is, do we go with this company and pay them to come in and do the high priority fixing? Or do we put it out to public bid? The only other step I can take is try to find what other CoStar vendors do this kind of work and give them the specs we have from the first company and see if they can give us a price on it, because they just won't come in and quote it. I might be able to go that route. So we, you know, it's $57,000. Is that a good amount? Is that bad? We don't have anything to compare it to. So I don't know how you want to proceed with that. Any ideas? Do you want me to see if I can find any other CoStar vendors that do that and try to get them to give us a price on our immediate needs?
Yeah, I think that would be a good start.
I mean, there's a
and
reason
that way
that
we
the
know if
state-
this is in the ballpark or not,
Right.
and if we can find other CoStars, we can just go from there and
We
get the
can
best
compare.
bid. Yeah. compare.
CoStars is good in its own right a lot of times because the state takes time to vet out companies and allows school districts throughout the state to use a CoStars vendor without the cost of putting out the public bid because they went through that already in order to approve them. It's just in the past,
I know that I had mentioned it in the past to you, but I do think it would be prudent to seek, if there are local companies that could help, that we could put it out to public bid. CoStar makes it easier, but it does not guarantee us the lowest price.
right. That's the downfall of CoStars.
I think Leslie's mom's on her way.
So, yeah, Stacy, you're right, because we've gone through other items, big ticket items, and CoStars is not always the least expensive way to go. That's correct.
So we're going to look for local and other CoStars. We'll do both.
Yeah, and I will reach out. Mountaintop might be able to, Productions might be able to steer me. Like I said, it's kind of a specific niche of a company, stage rigging. There's just not a lot of people out there, especially locally, that do this. But I will, that's a good, I'll get that done right away. Paving, I think you said over at Rice, we've done all the stuff, all the pothole repairing ourselves. We haven't been able to get, we got one, I guess I call it a bid, a quote, on to have all the paving done, the worst sections of each campus, and that was to the tune of around 100,000. So, obviously, if we need any work done, that's gonna have to go out to public bid. I don't know if anybody's been over to the schools recently. They're a lot better than they were as far as us, but we can only pave so much. The company that came in, they're saying if they cut up areas, they have nothing to tie the new stuff into because it's spider webbed and cracked so far. So they can't just come in and fix a 10 by 10 section. They have to go out 20, 30 feet to make it worthwhile, or we're gonna have somebody coming back the next year. So
Are we talking when we bid it, are we gonna grind and remill?
that's what would need to be done for the majority of it, yeah. Mill and repave. Now, again, the closest number we got was about 100,000, and that's a company that came up from near Allentown. We couldn't even get some local companies to come out and put out bids because they said if we're in the area, we'll come and give you a bid, but due to the cost of gas and whatever, we're not going to make a specific trip to come do it. And they know that at these prices, we're going to have to put out the public bid anyway. So they're not going to spend their time in coming in and give us an exact cost, like measure out and everything else. So that's where we're at.
Have we reached out to like our locals right here? We have a couple.
3 or 4 of them. Yep. And I can do it again. And like I said, this was the one company that got back to us.
Well, not to say if it went out for public bid, they might.
They would.
They would bid it, right?
Yeah.
It's just they're just
Of
not
course
gonna.
they would.
Right.
That's just like our garbage people. Like it's hard to get individual garbage. As soon as you put up a public bid, we did get some. So that's probably what's going to happen here.
Yeah, I think so. The problem is initially when this was brought up, it was in the middle of the school year when they weren't even doing blacktop, obviously, because of the weather. And I think a call, respectfully, because I know Scott has to make a lot of calls, it's just like, but maybe if it's publicly bid out there and you know that you get some action, and especially with business, you know, they're in full swing now. We hope. I mean, I know you mentioned Rice. Fairview was a disaster still. I mean, you could break an ankle walking through one of those potholes. Just
I've been at both.
Yeah.
Rice is a little more needy.
Okay, but still really
they're
both bad.
And so, to your point, it needs professionally fixed.
No, absolutely, yes.
Do we have a specification developed? Are we getting one? We've asked
For what?
a specification to bid this.
No, we haven't asked yet. We'd have to go through Tony to do that, I guess.
Okay, that seems like the next step.
Okay.
We should develop a spec that we can include in a bid.
Otherwise, it's going to be fall again.
Yeah.
And they're going to shut down the blacktop.
Do we want to shoot for the moon and say,
Both.
have them look at both and then
All.
we'll
Might as well.
prioritize one
All
year and
you
then
want.
the next year?
Secondary campus included?
Now we're gonna have a heart attack.
Yeah.
I think.
Maybe a 3-year plan,
Yeah,
1,
I
2,
think.
3?
Secondary, we can, I think we can get through another year with self-patching.
You know, that's Anna just made a good recommendation. First of all, we can't afford it all, of course. Like, but maybe if the bid is based on 3 years of one of each campus, and they're more likely to bid on it because it's a huge bid. I don't know. I just think it makes, but we can't absorb it all in one budget year anyway. So.
I mean, if we're gonna do a specification, the specification would match paving at all 3 buildings.
Right.
So we have it, why not have the bid and we can phrase it over 3 years, 1 building a year?
Yeah.
Don't most companies though, don't most of their bids aren't they usually only good for a year?
Yeah,
Because
especially-
no company's gonna wanna
Oh yeah, well,
agree
especially
to a
with the
price
price
now,
going up.
that's what I
might be
mean,
true.
and then say, so most companies only give you a 1 year.
I'm
We'll
assuming
do it
now
as like
prices
a
is 60
chance
days.
to press on it.
Yeah.
Maybe you can do it that way, but
The
I'm
only
just
way they
saying
would,
that,
the only way
if
they would give
prices
us the
shoot
3 years is
up,
if
they're
we're
not
paying it
gonna
all
wanna
front,
hold.
probably.
Well, we did get a 3-year offer on the garbage haulers, and we did 1, 2, and 3.
Yeah.
And they were willing to bid us out 3 years, and God knows what the gas is going to do over the next few years.
Yeah.
But they were willing to do it, so maybe paving companies will as well. I don't know.
Just
They
probably-
might say we'll only go a year
So
out.
much of that is based on the product, though. I can't even imagine what the escalating costs would be. or a hopeful reduction. I don't know. You could look at it one of two ways.
And like I said, if we get Tony involved and say, well, what do you want to spec out? Do you want to spec out fixing the worst areas or redoing the whole thing? The whole thing, I mean,
I'm not sure.
the
Tony-
worst areas right now is 100,000 for the 3 campuses, and that's the ballpark.
I'm not sure if Tony's able to draw a spec because he's not an engineer.
So we might have to get
This is Stacy. Is there a dollar amount that Natasha thinks that we can afford to address this summer? Is there something in the budget that she's comfortable with, whether it be
Starting with zero.
$100,000?
So
So, to answer you, Mrs. Haddock, so in, obviously everybody kind of giggled zero. But in this budget, something we've not done in the past, we have $150,000 added to Scott's budget. So whether that's going to be service, projects, that's not in our capital account, capital separate, but anything, so there's $150,000, we'll call it cushion for projects for Scott. But then that would be the stage could possibly be in there, any kind of other, like sewer, stuff like that. So, to answer your question, there's $150,000 that we did add to the budget this year.
I mean, my feeling would be is, if there's no sense looking to get a bid for all 3 campuses if that's something that we absolutely can't afford anyway. We're going to waste our time and our contractors' time bidding on something that we have no intention of doing. So I think we need to identify the absolute worst areas, whether it is the location of those areas within, walking paths of the parking lots of the schools, areas that, have opened up time after time. I think there's got to be some criteria to identify what we request to be bid on. And then, what my experience has been recently is because of the inflation and cost of materials and fuel that is skyrocketing, they're only reserving a bid for sometimes 30 days. So I think we need to be strategic that if we do get a bid, that we would be prepared to act on it quickly.
So really what we're saying is we need a bid for Fairview and for Rice. And then based on those bids, we'd make a decision if we could do 1 or 2.
I think that would be the logical way to go. Yeah.
Can I ask a question on that one? Sure. The access road in the Fairview, before Bow Creek was built, that access road was strictly to get to Fairview Elementary. When Bow Creek development was built, it now became an access way into that development, getting a lot more traffic, and I assume that increases the cost of maintenance. Does Fairview Township help with that cost in any way to the district? Because I assume the district's still responsible for that access road, completely, right?
No, which,
When you access Fairview Elementary from Spruce Street, that, when
That's
you
a
turn in
township
there-
road now.
yeah,
isn't
we
it?
don't,
The township maintains that completely now?
yeah, we just started from inside the school parking lot where our driveway
So
starts.
they took that over when that development was built
They must have, because they do all the plowing and taking care of
and
it.
paving. All right, never mind.
I would like it to get them to try to come and paint a little bit to our cars. PennDOT helped us out in years past coming into our driveway quite a bit, which helped a lot.
And then the second question, Natasha, the capital fund account, how much actually is in there now?
We have a couple accounts. Joanne actually just finished that. I have that.
And I know you said you put separate money in the operating budget for smaller things, but what?
There's some that are committed to other projects already, so.
Yeah, the uncommitted, I guess.
Yeah, once we're, because it's in my phone, I will get it to
Okay.
when we get off with that. I'll share it.
Thank you.
But to answer your question, Scott, so Mr. Riva is not an engineer, so something like this, depending on the scale of the work, we'll ask him if it's something he's comfortable in writing a spec. If he's not, we'll have to go to the board and discuss potentially of having an engineer come and design it. And so just want to be upfront and honest with that.
So we don't have a spec on file from previous paving.
Nothing.
We do have some files from Barry Isaac, who we worked with the brick. They came through and they did this whole spectrum years ago. They were gonna repave the whole district in phases. And phase 1 started, and then what happened after that, I don't know, but we do, Barry Isaac even told us they have all that on record. We can touch base with them and have them, he said they can certainly pull it up and have it updated and relook at it, which would cost us a lot less than having somebody come in from scratch.
You could use the RFP process instead of a bid process and put it on them to define what they're gonna do. Right?
Like we can put out the general parameters of coming in and fixing the worst part of our school.
And yeah, you can put out general parameters. I mean, you guys have done this, but you put the general parameters, they come in, their expertise, they look at it, they're saying, here's what we think should be done, here's what we'll do, here's the cost. So then you have multiple RFP responses. They're not all gonna be apples to apples, but you kind of have things to choose from. This same general parameters.
Are there any other questions or comments?
It's ongoing, Stacy. I'm sorry if you can't hear it.
I'm sorry, I'm having a difficult time hearing. It sounded quiet.
And it's Mr. Ben speaking, so it's unusual that it sounds quiet.
So an idea anyways to use RFP instead.
Well, we can ask Tony about that too. You know, he's familiar with it, he's done them.
Where are we on the middle school heating coil, air conditioning coil repairs in those classrooms?
The last communication I had, they were still awaiting them to be delivered, the 4 coils. They were expected in June, but the last, of course, they haven't got here yet. Once they do get in here, they're gonna come in and we will have to shuffle summer school around to have them installed during the summer before school starts.
So do we have students in the classrooms without the air conditioning, without those coils?
No, we rerouted them.
Okay.
We were gonna put 2 classes in there, but we rerouted them to other rooms. So those will currently be empty for the summer.
Okay. So we have basic, regular work time access to those rooms?
Yes. And as soon as they call me and say they got them in, actually I'll check with the contact there to see if they, because I do get, every 2 weeks, I get a request from Siemens, they request train, where's the update, where are we at this? So they are keeping up with it and they copy me and they just have not come in because of supply.
Okay. Back to you, Mrs. Haddix.
Yeah.
If there's nothing else on the agenda items and discussion, I will make a motion to adjourn.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Adjourn. Thank you.
Co-curricular, next on the list, Mrs. Haddix.
I'm sorry, Mr. Boone, I missed that.
Okay, Mr. Swank is not here. We're on co-curricular. Do you have a copy of the agenda?
Okay. Roll call, Mr. Macri.
Present?
2 members present. I will seek a motion and approval for the minutes of the May 12th co-curricular committee meeting. I so move.
Second?
We have 2 agenda items that we are looking to move to next week's agenda. The first is recommend consideration and approve James Niddle as Rice Elementary yearbook advisor for the salary per the agreement. And the second item is recommendation to consider and approve the following coaches for next school year, salaries per the agreement. Cross country, A through E, football, A through J, boys soccer, KL, and girls soccer, M through O. I guess everybody understands boys basketball, girls basketball, wrestling, field hockey, and golf. Is there any discussion?
Yes, item 1, I believe that's Jamie,
Yes.
not James. We'll make the correction so that it's correct in the board meeting agenda.
So is this for retro for this school year or is this for next school year? Because it says 21, 22.
Ret- retro.
So she's taken over the 21-22 yearbook. And then she will also do next year's yearbook.
Okay, do we know the number on
With the dollar amount?
Yeah.
I can put it on the agenda.
For the CBA.
Okay, this
All of them.
this item is basically just the retro.
Right.
Yeah.
It just doesn't.
Yeah.
She's gonna be doing all the work that would have been done throughout the year, so she's gonna get the entire amount that's in the CBA. And
Just
then
as
for
long as
20
we have the number.
Continue with a motion, I guess, to move those items if there's no further discussion.
No other discussion? Do I have a motion?
Motion?
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I have an open discussion question, Stacy.
Yeah,
Mr.
I'm sorry,
Ambrosi.
I can't hear.
No, I'm sorry. Mr. Ambrosi, how are we with the transition with trainers and so forth and playing physicals with Lehigh Valley?
Well, our current trainer, Cody Ripa, he's gonna move over with Lehigh Valley, and they're onboarding him right now. He'll be ready as of June 11th, or July 11th. As of July 1st, there's another trainer that they're gonna assign to us. So
So we're covered now.
we're in pretty good shape, because actually last year, July, we didn't even have anybody.
Okay.
So
we'll have a trainer July 1st. We'll have Cody additionally starting the 11th.
The 11th.
So we'll have 2.
Cody back with them.
So are physicals scheduled for
They
fall
haven't said
sports?
that yet.
Okay.
Are they coming here for the physical or are we going there?
What they had offered would be both.
Okay.
They would offer a day here, and then they'd have a voucher where you could go online and set up your appointment and go to their site.
Mr. Benz?
Yeah, I have an open discussion item. I don't know if everyone saw, but I just saw this last night. Alveda Gemsky, the former teacher and legendary coach here, she's being honored Monday in Hazleton somewhere for a Lifetime Achievement type award. Dean, I don't know if you know more about it.
I don't know a lot about it, I just heard about it today myself.
Yeah, so I was just thinking it might be nice if the district, if someone went or sent something, because she's not just being recognized for what you did for the Crestwood kids, it's for the whole area. But obviously it started here, so it just seems like the district should somehow, recognize it or be involved if it's not too late. I don't know where in Hazleton, I know it's, at one of the venues in Hazleton though.
Is this an event just for her or for
No,
sports in general?
there's like weekly things for existing athletes, but hers is a lifetime type achievement. And she lives in Delaware, I think, Barry, right?
Yes.
She's coming back for it. So just a suggestion.
Mrs. Black, for item number 1, the dollar amount should be $1,794.
For which one?
For number 1 in the co-curricular, for the Jamie, for the yearbook.
1794?
Yes. Thank you.
Dean, are there any issues or planned maintenance needed on any of our fields for the fall that are be done over the summer?
We have some minor things, we have a couple rips on the turf, but the men are aware of it, we're gonna fix that.
We're already under contract to have the field cleaned again. They do it twice a year, so before football season starts. it'll be groomed and cleaned.
While we're on extracurricular, address the two gentlemen, Scott and Dean, who just spoke. I would like to see over the summer the announcing area for the NFHS in the high school gymnasium, that we put like 2 rows down, put a table in. Right now, I did broadcasting, Mr. Benz did broadcasting. You can't get behind the table that's there. Put something in that is collapsible maybe and can be brought up, and that there's leg room to get in. A level thing, so you can put papers on there. Number 2, behind that area, a box on the wall to hold the equipment. That equipment right now is just laying in the bleachers, I believe, and like we were having, you have gym classes in there, sometimes you have your kids eating in there when we were going through COVID and stuff, and that equipment is just laying in the bleachers. That should be probably somehow secured, a box on the wall, have it locked up between events so that it doesn't get stolen, broken, or whatever. So maybe over the summer, if you two gentlemen could work together and get something permanent up there to help out. Mr. Ben, do you have any input you would like to give them maybe on that?
No, I had the same thought. We talked about it a little bit, but now would be the time to do it.
Now would be the time to do it in the off season.
Yep.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Extend the court by 10 feet.
And, I wanna, Dean, what is the update on sports, like out in the lobby? They used to have all the all-state students, championships, things of that nature.
You know what I looked into, John, and I don't know, I spoke to Tommy about it. They have like one avenue, because the problem is we would need so many trophy cases right now, and the space, and to build the cases or buy the cases, it would be pretty expensive. One option right now is they have it like, some of the schools are going to like a virtual Hall of Fame, where they'll put a big screen, touch screen. You could access everything, all the pictures, everything would be on it. It would be accessible through your website, through your smartphones.
Yeah, so John, you could put historical stuff, you could put current stuff, but really it's flexible. Any content you have to put in it, and it's touchscreen.
And another thing, like Jim mentioned, you could actually sell advertising through that, because you could flip screen through the content, and maybe every 5 screens, like you had mentioned, have an advertiser come up. That's something that.
Possibly we get an advertiser to sponsor?
Yes, the cost to do it, I think was about $2,800. So maybe there would probably be a sponsor maybe that would take that on, because that would be.
Ben's Realty.
Oh, Ben's Realty, yeah. But, yeah.
Would that be tied in through the server? How would that screen be loaded? Is that a one-time and it's self-contained?
No, you could continue to load your information.
The content
Yeah.
sits in the cloud, so the touchscreens need to have access to the cloud, and then as long as you load documents following their parameters, it'll automatically get picked up by the software. That these are like hotshots from
Brown,
was I was gonna say Dartmouth, who developed this in college and then turned it into a business that has taken off. I think you said Lehigh University.
Lehigh has it now. Yeah,
there's the cost of the TVs, and then there's an annual.
The annual's like, I think like $2,800.
Yeah.
But I mean, that sounds affordable, right? I mean, relative to
Yeah,
building
I think
the display case for all those trophies.
Yes.
So what would be the next step in that?
Had 2 meetings with the gentleman that owned the company. I think the next step would be, I guess, to maybe have it presented
So
to the board to.
And would you work in like the clubs and activities into it, or would they have their own screen? Like,
Oh, no, they could be worked into it.
so like
as well.
Odyssey of the Mind
Yeah,
or
that
PG?
could all be brought into it, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, you could have your distinguished alumni section, you could have, one school have like all their kids participating in college athletics, they'd have that flipped through every screen, every person, Yeah. I think maybe even Damien should take a look at it with me. We should bring him in on.
The backfield, is that gonna be ready for people to practice on,
Yes.
park on?
Yeah, if someone should start parking though, then you're,
I mean, historically, that's what we've always used
Yeah.
that field for. It's in the same, pretty much condition it's always been in at this point. So you can park on it. Because that's the reason they built that back there. They made us make that extra parking when we took it a space away from the field house.
it's a little inconsistent, the growth of the grass yet. The far end, over towards Mr. Bones, I think it's getting pretty nice. It's getting thick there. Some of the other, some of the closer areas a little spotty yet. I know our football coach looked at it, he plans on using it this year.
Okay.
We need it, because when we put the band on the other field, or junior high on the other field, and we have soccer teams down on the far grass, the turf's doubled up all the way through.
And a couple of those games, when it was wet, people parking on the,
Yeah, I think we have to be careful where we park them down there, because if we just give them carte blanche, we'll end up losing that, because we'll get a wet day and then we'll lose that field as well.
Are you talking about parking down by like where the track and field events took place, over by the soccer
No,
field?
Oh, I thought you meant down
Yeah,
the back.
we like,
well,
we
well,
never
down
like
the
to park
back,
behind,
yeah. I
not
would,
behind the bleachers.
behind the
Visitors.
if we could park there, I mean, I don't know. I mean, when football has a game, they do have people designated for certain things, so maybe we could say like, listen, if you want people to park,
And tape off an area that they could use
this is
there.
the only place they can, and you have to,
Right.
you have to park them in, kind of thing.
Right.
That could be
Right.
something they talk about, if we can use it. If you wanna, wait another year, we could do that too.
Well, it seems like it's ready to be used.
No, I think we could use it, just, I think if we could,
Where?
ideally, if we keep them in an area that we won't be using with the kids,
Okay.
would be ideal, because they get in there, they spin their tires,
Yeah, those wet games.
and all of a sudden you lose your practice field.
We used to pull buses back in there and forget it. I mean,
One question, Dean, I haven't been over on that field lately. Were you going to use practice? I know there's 4 manholes out there.
Yes,
How are we working around that?
around them,
Okay.
yeah, we're aware where they're at, and it's big enough that there's enough space there that we'll line our field, and that'll be way off on the sideline.
and we just for added safety, we do have rubber mats from the old weight room. We've talked about possibly just laying those over it. So if somebody does happen to go out that far and hit it, at least it'll be a rubber pad that they hit instead of the manhole.
One other, have you communicated to the coaches about having communication with the parents about not parking in the handicapped spots?
Yes.
As they will be, so that's been
Yes.
disseminated?
Yeah, and the coaches have sent it out, especially this past spring, they've sent it out, I've seen emails go out constantly. It didn't entirely end it.
Well, no, I
But
mean, they're
it
so used,
did,
I mean, really, it's a pickup
Yeah.
issue. Parents are waiting, and you just see it. They're just they're in the spots, in between spots.
Right.
So,
After
but,
school pickup, that's a totally,
right, but, I mean,
that's a total another ballgame there, but,
all you can do
they
is
are there then.
communicate it, and after that, if they get tickets, they get tickets.
yeah.
Yeah, I think that's maybe just within the last couple days or within the next week or so, we'll have the final passage by the township.
Mm-hmm.
I know they had to put it on their agenda a couple times, and it'll finally be through by the time school starts.
Right. It's been brought up at the township that those spots were being used by non-handicapped or plated vehicles. And there were instances where people that truly needed them had no spot.
Right.
So in the past, the township wasn't authorized to ticket on school property. So the township has changed their regulations to include that, I believe, and that will become official. So I do expect them to patrol and ticket.
Right.
So to me, our obligation is to inform the team. I mean, we should inform everybody, maybe at the next Comment News to go out. But from a athletic and activity point, the coaches, the leaders of those activities tell their parents. That's all we can do, and I feel clean then, and
Right.
then people learn by paying a parking ticket.
Right.
I mean, it is a shame that people would do that. It's the same ignorant people that would do it probably at I'm not saying somebody that would do it at a grocery store and they don't get ticketed, so they just do it wherever they go. It's really ridiculous. But no different than asking for a survey email. The percentage of people that read the emails or don't care, that's all we can do is
You
send the
see it.
communication out.
It doesn't matter what sport, multiple sports.
Right.
It is every one of those spots.
Right, it's ridiculous.
It's filled up consistently.
That's such
I'm
a
not arguing. I mean,
disrespectful-
it's an issue. So when
Yeah.
someone truly needs those spots, they're not available.
Yeah, it's a very
And
disrespectful.
we don't have very many as it is.
No.
You know,
Which
we
is
could
hard during
probably
the football.
add another row in behind and make another handicap even in the grass that sits right.
You're
adjacent
spending more
to it.
money on me, Dean.
We could
No,
keep
no,
it grass,
no.
we paint it.
Yeah, just paint it.
We
Just
used to
paint
paint the gravel.
Can you make that
Can
an
it be
ADA spot?
handicap?
I thought
I don't know if
ADA
that
you
could
have
be
to be
handicapped.
paved.
You can't.
I don't think so, because I mean, if someone's gotta get a wheelchair,
Chair,
and you're talking
I-
to someone that needs to pull their own
I
wheelchair.
thought ADAs
That's
had to
very
meet
solid there. It's
specifications.
I mean, I'd have to
The
look
grass
at it,
really
but
And
isn't
sign
grown there, it's kind of like.
I'd have to look at it, but there is specifications, so.
I mean, it wouldn't be a place that the police could ticket, but
Right.
what we're saying is
Yes.
for our
So you're
events.
not saying make it, you're not saying make it
No,
official.
but for our events, we could say that this is where if you have special needs, you can park here. It's closer to the stadium. You know, you're
Yes,
you're
and that's
so-and-so
what we've
could
done in the
drop you off
past,
and then turn and
when it was
park.
gravel.
Right.
We painted it blue, we didn't make it an official.
Right, but that's where you segregated it.
Yeah,
for
see, we were
needs.
allowed people to get closer to the stadium, and it wasn't official, but it did help keep a lot of the
Because
traffic out, so maybe we can get around it that
Yeah,
way.
and you really don't have that many spots there. You gotta help somehow.
I do think they'll
Third
ticket
row.
out front here now too, they're looking at. So just to make everyone aware.
I've had my hand up 17 times.
I'm sorry.
If he keeps going to call on me, you keep
Yeah,
asking
She
questions.
needs the movement, the exercise. Go ahead.
Wow.
Recovery. This is serious.
Carolyn Boone, in case anybody doesn't know. I had a couple questions about the camera, but will the membership automatically renew? Will we get notified because we pay the membership to view at home?
NFHS.
That's one question.
Oh,
And
yeah, throw that back at me.
For the camera,
Yeah.
how will we know to pay so we still have access each year? Do we get a renewal, or how do we do that?
I would think they would
I
send
think it's
something out
recurring.
before the
It's
season.
recurring.
It's what?
It'll recur. So whatever month that you started it in, it's gonna bill you for the year again. If that's the way you
Okay,
pay for
thank
it.
you. My second question is, does the camera have the capability to show both goals? Because we never see the action at the far
I
goal.
sent to them in lacrosse, and they said that's a bug right now. They're looking to do updates this summer. I think I have a meeting July 12th or July 11th with them. They said that is just, it's not just a Crestwood issue, it's, I
It
guess.
just doesn't go that far
It's,
right now.
they're just, I think even to follow the ball, they're having trouble with the ball so small, so fast, the game's quick, and it's just,
That issue though, when you told me about that, I went and looked at it both on my computer or desktop and then on the app on my TV. The issue was only in one, not the other. I think it's okay on the app, but if you're using a computer, it doesn't stand as far enough south to see the goal line of
Yeah.
your house.
yes.
So if you could switch, until it gets fixed, if you use an app, I think
But
you'd
yet
be.
it follows it in field hockey and football. It's
But
slow
that's
to
slower.
pan, sometimes it's slow to pan where the ball get out in front and then it'll slowly come with
No, but
it. But it's,
she's talking about something different. If you use NFHS on the computer, I think it is, it won't go far enough to get to the south goal.
We don't know that anybody scored until the delayed reaction of the crowd, or
Yes.
if they reset the ball,
No.
because most of the times the announcer doesn't announce the score. I've asked parents to ask the announcers.
You're on
to
the
give
south
score.
pole though, correct?
Yeah.
Yes, yeah, that's what,
Yeah.
I reached out to them and their answer was that it's a bug in their system yet.
Yeah.
And they have to do updates.
So you.
They said the whole game of lacrosse they're having problems with.
You know the setup I have at my bar. So I had the app on the main TV, and I had, it's a Mac Mini on the monitor next to it. The one on the TV was fine, the one on the computer screen wasn't. So their issue is, it's dependent on how you're gaining access.
Right. So,
And can we control to display the score, because the score's never displayed? Is that within our realm or not?
yes, but not without a cost. The problem is, especially when you take the scoreboard, like, they had it worked out in basketball this year, but the scoreboard is connected directly. A lot of times with lacrosse and field hockey, we take the scoreboard down the field, and then there's a separation from the computer. So it's not direct line.
Because the
So you
camera
have-
doesn't show the scoreboard either, so if the announcer doesn't announce it,
Right.
you can't ever take your eyes off to know.
Yeah, but
if you're winning
it's
or
all
not.
tied into the scoreboard box.
Okay.
So if the scoreboard box is up in the press box, like it would be, they could
Well,
follow
why
the
does it
field.
come down? Why does it have to come down?
Field hockey, it's much easier to make directions. The person's right on the field, it's directly top with.
Because I'll be honest, if we're paying for it, I'd rather
Keep
see
the ti-
everything.
to keep the times.
I kind of want to know the score and want to see the whole game if we're paying for it.
Right.
But it's very nice. It's nice to have.
Yeah, but we're still gonna be okay in the gym this year, right? With the score?
Yeah, well, see, that's tied right there, though.
So you're good.
Yeah.
So you can see
Can't
the
there-
score during the
Can't
game.
there be a banner on the
Yes.
bottom of the screen that we control the banner?
Yeah.
I saw other schools where there's a banner on the bottom of the
Yeah.
screen that says.
To get the banner,
It's
you-
1-0. That's like.
There's you have to buy the.
They look different too sometimes.
Yeah.
They're
Some
new.
have the
They're new guys.
scoreboard
They've been
in
in,
a
what,
split
2 years,
screen.
they just started in COVID. I've seen the other companies have been
Okay.
struggling through their.
Okay, we will be working on that issue. Any other items?
Way to cut it out.
It's getting supper time here. Okay. Back to you, Stacy. Or, yeah.
No other discussion or agenda items from the public? Hearing none, I'll move to adjourn. I so move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. And finally, we're around to transportation. Mrs. Bibla.
Roll call, Ms. Spath's not here. Mr. Macri.
Present.
Make a motion to approve the minutes, May 12th, 2022. I so move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Agenda items 1 through 3 to move. Any questions from the committee?
I have a question on item number 2. As I recall, we voted with the consideration that we were going to receive $20,000. I would be opposed to moving that to the board agenda till we get resolution on the $20,000 payment.
Do we have?
Were the cameras already installed? David,
I'm sorry.
were the cameras already installed?
Yes, the cameras are fully installed. It's complete.
So why, I mean, again, we voted on approval of this item only on the premise of $20,000 being reimbursed to us from Reinheimer.
Yeah.
So I am opposed to moving this to the agenda until we receive clarification on that money.
Yeah, I know there was the question of insurance. I believe was that the.
But that was not in part of the agreement. If you go back through the board meeting minutes, what was approved was we would pay $46,000 and Reinheimer would reimburse us $20,000 additional. That's what was voted on and approved. So I am, again, in not favor of moving that to the board meeting till we have further clarification.
So you wanna put that, on hold then,
We're gonna table that.
till August?
Natasha, what did we budget for those cameras? The full amount or 36 or 46? Do you recall?
I do recall, so we have in a separate capital account, so we just had like things committed to it, and we did commit the 56, but then with the 20,000 from Reinheimer, so they both were committed that way.
Okay, so we
So
should
we were-
table. Go
sorry.
ahead.
So we were
Sorry.
paying
See, I guess I thought, I was going with what John said, I thought that the total was 56, but we were gonna be doing 36 with Reinheimer doing 20.
So the PO to the Roar is 56, and then we were gonna be reimbursed 20. So our full PO to Roar is 56.
Our full PO, but then we're supposed to get 20 back from Reinheimer.
And we haven't had a savings like on their bill or anything like that, nothing. Okay, so, make a motion to table number 2,
I make motion to table number 2.
second, all in favor?
Aye.
So we're gonna table number 2. Any other questions on 1 or 3?
Can I make a suggestion on 3?
Mhm.
Pending solicitor review after that, just in case we're not ready. We should just have that.
So we're gonna make a note to do pending solicitor review on number 3.
And as soon as he reviews that and gets it to me, I will get it out to the board so you can look it over before we vote.
Okay. Any other questions from the board? From the public? Seeing none. Open discussions, presentations.
Hello everyone, I'm Dave Simonovich, I'm the Transportation Director here at Crestwood. And I'm just going to do a brief review of our pupil transportation subsidy, answer some questions you needed, see where we're going, where we've been the last 3 years, where we're projected to go next year, and we'll talk a little bit about subsidy as we go on. So, just a little review. So what is a pupil transportation subsidy? It's, we get multiple subsidies here at Crestwood, but it's funding given for the transportation we provide to our students here at Crestwood. All the funding we receive is based on the previous school year's data. So this year, we're due our last subsidy payment for the year. Any day now, here in the middle of June, it's all for the 2020-2021 school year, and the transportation we run during that. So you're always working 1 year behind when you're looking at pupil transportation subsidies. The funding's provided over multiple installments throughout the school year. I believe the first one's in October, second one's in March, and final one's in June. They're broken up into percentages. And the average transportation subsidy in the state of Pennsylvania for a school district is approximately 50% of what is paid out to our transportation providers. That's according to PDE.
And what about approximately what percent do we get?
I have that actually in about 3 slides from now,
Okay.
so we can go over that for the last 3 years. So, what factors do determine the amount we get for pupil transportation subsidy? The age of the school vehicle or school bus, the number of students that are assigned to said school vehicle, the mileage students are transported on the school vehicle. That's a very important one because it's the mileage for when students are on the vehicle, not when they're running what they call deadhead or empty miles. So that's a huge factor into it, and they are the 3 factors that we can kind of control here between the bus contractor and the school district with our routing and our assignments for school kids on buses. The 3 factors that are determined by the state that come into play here are the STEM market value, where that's basically the property values throughout the entire school district, the tax base, I believe, is that correct, the STEM? The market value aid rate, that should actually say market value aid ratio. And again, that's a formula that's determined by the state. And the PDE cost index, which is also set by the state. It's supposed to be an offsetting cost rate for the rise and fall of inflation. So for next year, it's going to be much higher. But we can talk about that in a little bit. So I just wanted to bring up this is basically a formula worksheet. This is what we use to calculate the state formula based on all the factors that we just discussed. If you look, everything in the yellow is the objects, are the objects that could change based on how we route, how many students we transport, how many miles we go, and the age of the school vehicle. All that is run through a calculation formula, which down at the bottom far right of the screen gives you a total, and that would be the daily rate that we would pay, for example, Chivarella, who does our specialized transportation, some of our non-public transportation. Based on those numbers, that would be what we'd pay Chivarella a day. They do work off state formula. Reinheimer Bus works off a set contract with us, so they don't work off this exact state formula. So I know I used Reinheimer, obviously, in the example up here. If we did pay them off state formula, this is what would equate to your daily pay. And this number above it, this 60,000 right here, would be your what you could submit for your reimbursable cost based on that one school bus run per day.
So what is the maximum number, or what's the target number of students per bus, per route?
The target number would be a full bus. You always want a full bus. Right
So
now,
what's a full bus?
I'm sorry, 72 or 81, based on what we have. We have 4 buses in our fleet with Reinheimer that can fit 81.
Mm-hmm.
We have the balance are all 72s. This past school year, which we're calculating all the data right now, we only had 4 runs that weren't at capacity, being that all buses were doing basically double runs, doing a high school, doing an elementary, doing a high school at St. Jude's, everything like that. So we only had 4 buses that weren't at capacity this year.
Wait a minute, last question?
Yes.
Does that mean next year that will factor into higher reimbursement for us?
It should.
Okay.
It should, but the problem is next year's reimbursement you aren't going to see until 2023.
Right. No, again, but still to build up to the future instead of just having unrealized costs, as challenging as it was this year for so many families or school, get with lack of drivers and getting kids to this class on time, and then of course how many messages do we get to say bus number 12 is doing 2 runs, your kids are going to be late? That was a huge detriment, obviously, and a challenge that both the district and Reinheimer deals with. But in reality, if they're all full,
yes,
we're going to get more money than reimbursed technically the following year.
Yes, ideally that we are in a set contract with
Right.
Reinheimer. The ideal scenario would be to almost gain buses. We are, being that the capacity count of 72 students on a bus, we're actually above that. Not that we're running buses with more than 72 kids on it. What that means is we could have 40 routed to the high school, and then in the same pickup they'll drop off their high school kids, go start their elementary run soon, pick up, say, 55 kids for elementary. Well, they're running 95 kids on their morning run, but you could only put into the formula for 72 because you can't exceed the capacity of your vehicle. So with me saying that it'd be more beneficial to us, which you'll see when we review the past 3 years, to have more vehicles on the road, we could take, instead of having 95 kids, we could route more towards a 75, 72, 75, get closer to capacity, divide these kids through other vehicles, get more reimbursement back for
And
us
actually,
in that way.
and our net would be a positive net gain.
Correct.
So, and that number, that is just the number of people assigned to the bus, or is that actual riders?
It's just for the, on specialized transportation, it's the number of riders. For the bus transportation, it's the number assigned, the pupils assigned, because the bus is assigned a route. So regardless, the bus runs that route, whether your student comes out or not, they're assigned to that bus. So that's the same route that should be run every day unless we authorize a change on that route.
So, is every student assigned on a route then?
Barring cyber school, yes, they are.
So is it possible to fully load those other 4 bus routes?
Yes and no. I mean, there's probably, we're looking at 1 or 2 week a load. The ones that are struggling where I say no is more your Whitehaven, your outliers, because especially with the high school, and then the opposite happens on the way home for the pickup of the elementary kids, you're on a time frame.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where the time comes into play, and that's where, I know as we discussed previous, you talked about what would be the sweet spot in mileage. About 70, 75 would probably be a good spot. I mean, there's no sweets, but we want to get as many as we could, but we're at time constraints now.
Mhm.
So that's where you fall into the time constraints. So a good number to look at is about 70 to 100. The closer to a full capacity bus and 100 miles you are a day, the better we're going to be off in the long run. So here's what we were talking about a little bit, the last 3 years of subsidies. In 1920, which was that was the beginning of COVID, but we did run, if you look, Reinheimer ran 33 buses, 5 vans. Chivarella ran 26 vehicles because they do run cars and vans. We had 3,152 students. We paid out slightly over $3 million. but our reimbursement came back at a 57.6% reimbursement rate. And that was based on the 18-19 school year data for transportation. In 2020, 2021, which was the COVID year, which was all over the place, we paid out $2.9 million. I'm sorry, because that wasn't the COVID year, that was the start of the COVID year, because that was for 1920. But we paid out $2.934 million, got back almost 1.5, so we were at a 50.9% reimbursement rate. We did go down. They were using the same amount of buses. Chivarella did use 3 less vehicles. I did look at it. We were a little rough on the routing too with deadhead miles, so that was a big cause there. And then in 21-22, which is this school year, based on the 19-20 data, I'm sorry, the 2020-2021 data, we paid out $2.6 million for transportation, and I don't have the reimbursement rate back yet because, like I said earlier, that's due any day now. That subsidy is based on the Act 136 of 2022 that we submitted, which was the COVID funding for how you ran. So I don't really have an exact answer for that right now. If I had a guess, I'm going to think we're going to be slightly lower than the reimbursement we got in 2020, 2021.
So it would be 50 or below.
What's that? I'm thinking you're probably going to be between a total of 1.3 and 1.4, somewhere in there.
And we're just waiting on our last payment, correct?
Correct, but that's the one they adjust for the subsidy for the Act 136 of 2020.
How do we count total students? Is our enrollment down 200 students in a year?
So that's probably cyber school?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I'm sorry, that's students that just rode
I was gonna say.
transportation, I'm sorry.
But what about, so we have more students than that because we have the St. Jude's run.
No, that includes the St. Jude's run, according to the data I pulled. That's what was put in. I can't necessarily speak for that. I'm sorry I wasn't here, but so I didn't put it in, and I'd have to go back and pull files and pull student files. So I can't speak exactly for that number and back it up. But it should include the St. Jude's run, if that's what you're asking. I can't guarantee it's correct in there. But it
Because
should
St.
include the St.
Jude's,
Jude's run.
Holy Redeemer.
It should include everything, the non-publics, the charters. Yeah, that should include all.
To Jim's point, though, something changed. Because we're not down 200 students. Something changed.
Well, again, we talk about the numbers that are out on
The
cyber. If they're not
and all the
counted,
kids that
Yeah,
didn't come
cyber is
back.
not counted. If you're full-time cyber.
Yeah, but they wouldn't have been in 2021 either.
well,
No, but that's last year's
it's
data.
last year's.
That's the virtual year
Oh.
data.
Yeah.
Right, so 21-22
All right, I see what you're
data
saying.
is from
1920.
2021.
It's always a year behind.
Right.
It's a little,
Still seems high, but.
Yeah, I'm shocked, but again, it's not arguing about the numbers, it's just surprising. And then, of course, you see the reduction in that we paid out, but it makes sense if we have 200 less travelers as relates to students on buses in the total count.
yeah, it is. That's a factor. It's definitely
Yeah.
a factor.
So, based on just glancing at this, I mean, if you look at our total will be less than that 1.49 this year.
Yes.
Going into next year, based on our better inputted data from runs this year, are we going to see that number jump back closer to the 1.7, 1.8?
This is where I project us to be for next year right now. I mean, there are determining factors I don't have right now. I don't have all the hard data from us. We're actually tabulating that right now because state reporting gets released where I can start putting in numbers middle of next month usually. So I don't have this STEM market value and the market value aid ratio. These are guesstimates just by the way it's increased over the last 5 years. So I kind of just went with a guesstimate so I can put us in the ballpark. That again isn't released till sometimes late July, I believe it is, we talked about. So on my guesstimates, we'd be at about, it's slightly over 1.5 when we get back next year. For 21-22 school year runs, that's this current school year's runs.
So what did we do different 3 years ago that we got 1.7, almost 1.8?
Yeah,
to go back a street.
Yeah, sure. You had more buses on the road. I can tell you that. I have all that data on hand. You had more buses on the You had more buses on the road. You had more Chivarella vans on the road, which since Chivarella works off state formula directly, they're 100% reimbursable. So that does help. That affects. I mean, the more buses, they were doing more miles. They were routed better.
So we'd be beneficial to not use Reinheimer vans at all and try and get Chevrolet all the van service?
No, because the reimbursement, we're paying Reinheimer regardless. So we're better off using their vans. Our best bet is just to get more efficient. Get them more efficient. Get them running more miles with students. Maybe get a couple more students on the vans that are outliers and get their mileage up. Because, I mean, like I said, we're paying them a set rate regardless, which we agreed to by contract. So our best move, along with the buses and vans, is just to get them running more efficient, running better miles with students, so we capture that reimbursement. So, I mean, we had, you know, we're running dead miles, and it's killing us, honestly, on the reimbursement.
And that's 18-19, which is the year before the contract that's in place now, right? Okay.
Yeah.
So I don't, if that could have been a variable too.
So, I mean, what can we do to improve our transportation subsidy? So, minimize our student transportation vehicles from running empty miles. I mean, that's the biggest number one. I mean, I've ran through the data the last 3 school years that we have available, and there are a lot of empty miles, way more than there should be, and it's a simple correction.
What is that correction? I mean, like, what's an example?
If we adjust 6 routes by 10 miles, we get an additional nearly $30,000 in reimbursements. And by saying that the 10 miles with students, that's just 2.5 miles on a high school run, 2.5 miles on an elementary run in the morning, and then 2.5 and 2.5 in the afternoon.
So how do we do that? Give me one example. Is that like moving a bus instead of having it at Reinheimer, having it parked here in the parking lot?
That's definitely one example, or it airs. A second example would be there's a lot of buses that run the same streets and one goes left and one goes right. Maybe we assign that bus because we can fit kids and we just move a couple kids and that bus makes a loop through a development and now it gained 2.5 miles. You know, something as simple as that.
You know, pick up a student earlier.
Yeah,
I
grab a
mean, if
student
you're running
earlier, just-
out and back somewhere, let's say way out towards Walpole area,
Yeah.
get a student on there very soon. Poor kid's got a longer bus ride, but it favors the district.
Well, that's one thing I'm looking at too, because I don't know if this is happening, but I'm trying to work with Reinheimer and seeing if drivers are taking their buses home, which they do in normal districts. But if you're taking your bus home and you live all the way in, you know, Wallapin, and you start your pickups in Fairview, it's pointless, you know. So I just want to make sure.
So are we
getting
paying for those
efficient.
empty miles from their house in Wapwalpin to where they start in
We're
Fairview?
paying the fuel. We're paying the fuel, but we don't get reimbursed for it. That's the problem. So, I mean, as long as the miles with students on your bus are always equal to or more than the miles with, so even if they're 49 with and 49 without, you could submit 98 miles for reimbursement to the state. You know, even though you had 49 without students on there, but you always got to keep that number higher. That's the secret. At least equal.
And is what we submitted this year more in line with that?
No, it still needs work. It needs work going into next year. That's the biggest thing we're working on right now. We're going to be switching over July 1st, like resetting TransFinder, rerouting everything, and we called TransFinder actually and had them put it in part in the programming because you could adjust things. And by the route we set, it'll tell us the miles with, miles without. So we can look at that before a bus even goes on the road. We don't have to wait a month to get their billing in.
And you do that by, you're basically giving each bus a home base, saying where it is at the start of the day.
Correct, but we just want to make sure this home base we're giving it on the TransFinder program is the correct home base.
And that's a manual transaction.
The home base would be.
Okay.
Yes.
You know-
Like we have, I know, I'm sorry.
No, sorry, go ahead.
But we have right now, I know the buses that there's about half the buses for Fairview and stuff stay in Ayers. They are routed from Ayers. So I mean, we just need to know. You know, we need to be in the know of Reinheimer. Again, it's totally fine if they're taking a bus home, but if they're going to take the bus home, what's the purpose of it? You know, let's make sure there's a purpose where their employee could easily drive 8 miles to get to Ayers instead of them taking a bus home and wasting 16 of our miles every day.
If we could find a spot to stage a bus or park a bus in
Correct.
Whitehaven, we could have their driver leave their car there.
Correct. Even Ayers would cut 6 or 7 miles off. Now, I can't sit here and say with 100% certainty that driver may be leaving from Ayers, you know? But, I mean, that's what we're looking into. So anything.
Dave, did you, when you were looking into this at all, look at any potential savings there could be if there was a better balance of students between Fairview and Rice? If there was any redistricting? in certain
I honestly
neighborhoods?
did not. I did not.
Is that theoretically possible? Is that something worth exploring?
I mean, anything's possible, honestly. I'm definitely not gonna rule that out, but that's kind of above my decision making if that was gonna happen.
To look
but-
at it, so, I mean.
But no, I know what you're saying, and yeah, I mean, it could play into miles.
Okay, I'll interject. This is the first time you're probably hearing it. We discussed with Dave as he's going through the summer and rerouting the buses and making this a much more efficient thing. We asked him to take a look at possibly 2 bus routes right now in the elementaries going to Rice. That next year could just take those 2 buses and send them to Fairview, which would be sort of a redistricting and a balancing act. And obviously, my kids went through this in the early 90s, late 80s, early 90s. My kids were affected by a little changing of the lines. So it is something that we're going to take a look at and try and balance out our schools, not this fall, but start working on it so that next fall, all you gotta do is say, hey, those 2 buses, they're going over there. So we're looking at it, yes.
Thank you.
Second item then we already talked about to help improve our subsidy is to maximize capacity. Like I said, most of our vehicles are running at capacity. The vans, not the Chivarella vans, but some of the vans, because they grab the outlier kids for Reinheimer or where a bus can't go down a road, are lacking, so we're going to definitely try to pick that up. I mean, you could actually grab some quick reimbursement by making simple adjustments on a van of just how they pick up to cut down the empty miles and maximize their capacity. Stay in constant contact with our transportation providers, just like I mentioned about Reinheimer, just, hey, where are these buses leaving from, what's going on, why are we doing this, and just staying in touch constantly on this stuff because it is money to the district. And then frequent reviewing of the routes. I just think it just seems like for too long, and when I came in here, it's kind of like a set it and forget it type thing. You set it up in the beginning of the year, you add a kid in, but monthly, Reinheimer is required to submit mileage forms, and it's listed miles with, miles without, where's the bus going, this and that. And I just don't think we sit down and we collect the data, but I don't think we review the data and say, why does this bus have 15 empty miles? Why does this bus have 20 empty miles a day? Where we can make a simple adjustment. Maybe it's just in the order we pick up kids. And I think we could just grab easy funding there. I think the funding's there for the taking. We just got to be more diligent about the way we redo it. So I did get asked one other thing about reducing routes if we did eliminate bus routes, if possible, versus the cost of fuel now with the rising price of fuel. So if we were to reduce any of the bus van routes, I don't feel it would be financially beneficial to us as a district. Average bus return on a route is about $7,000 to $10,000 of reimbursable costs that we can put towards there, and that's times by the CPI and everything like that goes into the reimbursement formula. So we would get, for a 70-mile daily bus route, we get a reimbursement rate to put towards the CBI of about $8,053.20 for that specific route for the year. And for that same 70-mile route for the year, we'd use about $4,347 in gas. So that $8,000 is almost we almost get that in full reimbursement back. So there'd really be no point. I mean, we'd be wasting almost $3,000 or more than $3,000 by eliminating that run. And that's where I said earlier that if we were actually able to get additional buses on the road, I mean, I'm not saying we need 5, we need 10, but if you're able to get 1, 2 buses on the road, I mean, you could capture money. There's money out there to be captured with a set contract rate that Reinheimer has. So that would only benefit the district more.
So an extra bus route doesn't cost us any more money from Reinheimer.
No, it would actually.
Or 5 more bus routes.
It would actually make us money.
I think that's what. So again, just public perception. I know how they're wasting money. I see buses drive with no one on there. I would think that's the logical thing. Again, it could be the last stop, whatever. But the reality is, you would also think, well, let's cut 3 bus routes and consolidate. It's totally contrary to what you would say in savings money because of the reimbursements.
Correct.
And our contract. That needs to be understood, like more publicly, widely known. Because I thought we should I think this is great, we'll reduce a route.
Hey, good luck with that, Jim, though.
No, I know, but I'm saying though, is if
But
you
you
really
lose
had
money
bus
by
routes,
reducing routes.
but if you had by consolidation
I
the
know what
bus
you're
routes,
saying, but that, for the public to grasp that concept.
I know, I'm still having a difficult time myself, and we're learning, but the concept is it's not just the efficiency of all these routes, it's what we can get reimbursed by the state. So if you said, well, we put these two routes together, again, there's no drivers. So I was thinking it made sense that we reduce a route, there's less drivers, we have less problems, but it wouldn't benefit us financially.
The only way it could benefit us is if Reinheimer agreed to reduce
Now,
by $60,000.
Again, totally different
for a
story
bus
though.
route, which
The,
is
the
something
contract
that-
adjustment, which
Which
is
is
another.
something that we could also say, like, listen, we can reduce 2 bus
Right.
routes. Please take $120,000 off of our contract.
Right.
You don't have to find 2 more drivers. That's also something that we could do. I don't know if they do it, but
Yeah, I mean, we'd be better off running pre-school buses with, say, 55 kids on there, 165 kids, than running 2 full 81 passenger buses. You know what I mean? The same miles. You're gonna get more money.
More
Those-
reimbursement, so the
those
net to the
80
district is
90%
greater.
full, you're gonna get more money back for what you pay out. So, I mean, ideally, right now, I mean, they're driver crushed. Their mechanics are driving.
Yeah.
So, I mean, their
So then
mechanics
you-
are staying to fix the buses.
Maybe that's an example though, because in this labor market, even if we wanted the additional bus routes, they're not gonna find the extra drivers.
Yeah, I mean, they're trying. It's not a lack
Oh,
of
I
trying.
know, I know.
It's just not.
And we are too.
So if they can't meet our route request, is that a breaking of the contract? Does that enable us
I'd
to
have to
reduce
review.
payment?
I'd have to review and sit down with you. I mean, I don't know.
it
You know,
has to be,
right off the top of my head,
as far as I
can't-
remember, it has to be mutually agreed upon when we change it. But there would be no reason for them to not agree to a more efficient route. I mean, that's.
Right.
No, I mean, we had a meeting with them approximately 3 to 4 weeks ago, and they were very receptive about us adjusting routes and adjusting routes just for our reimbursement rate, because they understand why we're trying to do it. I mean, we flat out put that to them, and their response was they totally understand. So,
Have you had any follow-up discussions with that?
as far as,
The next steps of this, how we move this forward so that we're able to enact it for September?
well, the next step would be when we do the rollover of the data and the
Right,
transfer.
so that's all us. So we need to do the transponder
When we
reset.
Yes, when we do the
Okay.
reset and do the reroute, which will start in early July,
Mhm.
then we'd go to them with the routes, and I'd say, you know, this, and this, here's what we moved on this route, or with this bus, or anything, and highlight that for them, because.
But they're
we-
invited to with you, right?
Oh, they
Yeah,
can come and sit
they're-
with me
they
every
were-
day, I mean, I have a good working relationship with them,
Right.
you know, right off the bat, so, I mean, I have no problem with them at all, they're responsive and receptive to our ideas, so.
Their biggest gripe to me, you know, about the beginning of the school year is they want their rosters like that second week in August kind of thing.
I granted, I haven't been here for a summer, but I mean, just from past instances where I worked, I don't think that's an unrealistic expectation.
Perfect.
I don't. So, I mean, any other questions on the routes versus fuel cost type area here? And the last thing we had pre-discussion about we wanted to bring up was just charter trips, school activities and sports trips. So just some of the things we're doing to try to obviously cut down costs on that, because I know, again, I wasn't here yet, but I know field trips kind of just came back into play here, I believe, in the last school year, more of a prevalence. So what we're doing mostly on sports here to reduce that is Dean, our athletic director, has worked with me a lot in the spring. I really only saw spring sports this year and was exposed to that, but we did a lot of time shifting so we could get school bus contractors to drive these routes, which obviously saves us a lot of money. Being Reinheimer always has first dibs on it, and then we did, going into number 2, make good contacts with secondary providers that also do school bus transportation. So if Reinheimer Bus or Chivarella, who did help us out also, was not able to provide our transportation since they're our primaries, we established 4 other companies that are willing to help us on a needed basis. I mean, they do service other districts, but all 4 of those companies, they're on the list. Pace Transportation, Student Transportation of America, STA, which is Wilkes-Barre area, Pace is Wyoming area, Rover Bus, which is Hazleton, and Yatesville or Parish Transportation, which is Pittston, all have agreed or helped us at one time or another here during the spring, and all have gave me their word that they would be willing to help us during the fall or winter if needed. All of their rates do fall right in line with Reinheimer's bus rates for charters, so we're not paying any more by using those. Some of them were actually slightly less, but all of them basically fall right in line with their rates. So we are in the process. Myself and Dean were just going over this today, and actually right at the beginning of the meeting because I just got all the information. We're in the process of offering our coaches an opportunity to be trained and qualified to drive a school bus. I guess in the last year or two, some of our coaches did express interest when there was a bus shortage or a problem getting transportation for a sporting event. Coaches stepped up and said, "Hey, if I could get trained, I'd be willing to drive. I'd be willing to get my CDL if I qualified to drive a bus." So we did get we got a lot of information for the coaches. We got the parameters of what they need to do, what the classroom work would be, what the on-road work would be. And got some information to see if they'd really be interested, because now we do have the availability to set up classes with White Transit, who's the Nanticoke and Hanover provider, who's the sister company of Reinheimer, who actually does the CDL training. So they'll set it to our coaches' schedules, they told me, if we have enough interest. They'll actually work with them to do it in the evenings or whenever they want them to do it. So,
are we gonna get interest with that or not?
I originally would have said yes, but the way it's worded, it mentions that they're responsible to pay for the onboarding.
well, Reinheimer.
And I don't know whether they're gonna buy into that. I think they felt.
Meaning our coaches would have to pay for the onboarding?
They pay for their CDL license. Reinheimer pays for the physical, everything else.
So what's the
clearances.
CDL license cost?
I honestly have no idea. I didn't
It
get that
maintains.
information.
This benefits the district. If they're working for us,
Us.
wouldn't it behoove us to?
Wouldn't Reinheimer pay them if they're gonna be a Reinheimer
You're an
employee
employee?
with a CDL license?
Reinheimer's going to pay them.
But wouldn't they
Right.
pay for the?
They said they don't pay any of their driver's
Full-time
licensing
drivers.
according to them.
That's what I was gonna say, if it's their policy, if they don't pay for any of
A
them.
Class A
they're not
CDL is
gonna be
between
required.
$2,500 and $5,000.
It's a class. I believe it's a class B.
Class B?
With class B with a
Still.
passenger and school bus endorsement.
I would say it's probably not much less.
Wow, that's a lot.
Who's gonna pay that money up front to be a full-time bus driver,
That's
let
every
alone?
5 years?
Yes, the renewals every 5 years. Now I'll make sure, and for you, Dean, I'll definitely confirm that information in the price.
I'd like to know that, because in order to get our coaches there, I'd be
Yeah.
willing to, they pass, we reimburse.
Yeah, because I can't see that honestly being their policy and all the people
And,
they have are
and
paid.
coaches are doing this out of again, I know some of them get paid, but they're doing this out of the goodness of their heart.
Right.
And I agree, there's no way they would do this.
No.
But again, the net is the respect and the ability to be able to help the district and the student athletes, which is why they would do it in the first place. I don't think any coach is saying, I'll consider this so that they can make money.
Right.
But they certainly don't want to lose thousands of dollars.
Right.
That's crazy.
Right.
It says
That's crazy.
for PA, it's $4,000 to $7,000. And you would have to have your SS card.
Yeah, that's school bus endorsement.
for your license?
Well, that's why people aren't going to be, they have to pay $5,000 up front to drive a bus?
I wonder
Yeah,
what
just
the
because
other
that's for the
companies,
classes.
if the other
Yeah.
companies do that as well.
That they're gonna teach them.
I
The
honestly
classes
don't.
are gonna
Right.
be from.
And they're providing other people would have to teach them.
I mean, that's a question I could have. So, but I will confirm that again. But that's exactly what the office manager at Reinheimer told me. So, a lot of districts are in similar shortages. I mean, we ran into that's why Dean was doing a lot of rescheduling. So, I mean, districts even coming here were rescheduling times and things like that. So, it's an across the board issue right now. It's not just a Crestwood issue. It's an across the board issue with shortage of bus drivers. And then another way we could definitely reduce is to eliminate or limit the non-school vehicle related charters, having to go to outside providers, charter buses, big March buses type areas. I mean, it's just not cost efficient. It's a last resort that we go to when we have to do these things. But sadly enough, we had to go to it a handful of times this past year. So it's something, by picking up those 4 bus companies, I'm hoping we can all but eliminate here going into the fall and winter and time adjustments and things that are working even without the coaches coming or not coming into play for this, so.
Dave, the other thing was a possibility of looking into leasing 2 vans.
Yeah,
And that way you
that's-
don't even need the CDL, you don't need the license, you can.
Van availability is the nightmare right now. I did look into that, talked to Mr. Qualley about that, and I mean, it's, you're probably on an 8 to 12 month waiting list just to get a vehicle available to get right now.
So, I mean, in that
transportation
need,
providers
I mean,
can't get 'em.
Chivarella offered, wouldn't they pick up anything extra van-wise for us?
Well, that comes in with their contract, and yes, they would, but they only have the 9 passengers. So they're more than happy, and they did for tennis this past spring, the boys tennis they provided, and they're willing to help where they could. But again, only having 9 passengers only limits you to certain teams. I mean, they'll run 2 vans, but
Well, why not run, I mean, how many's on a golf team?
That would take,
No, there's-
one would do golf.
we said golf, 2
One would do your
cross country.
tennis.
We did 1 tennis.
2 would probably do wrestling.
Yeah, 2 wrestling. We talked about some examples.
Yeah, you could cover some of your.
I mean, why wouldn't we just get Chivarella signed up for that?
Oh, they're interested. They're interested. There's no doubt about it. But I mean, when you, like I said, when you get into the football,
If
the
they have them-
baseballs, the
and-
larger ones, they don't have drivers that want to do 3, 4, 5
And their
drives.
availability at those hours is shaky too. That's why if you have the coach, he's there.
All right.
You give him the van and he goes.
Yeah, and I'm not sure how far we can go. I know in the contract, we are to go through Reinheimer first. It's
Yes.
in their contract.
Yeah, they're priority 1 first. I mean, there's a lot of there was this
But they
past spring though there
basically
was
passed on everything.
yeah there were a lot of things they couldn't do by the time.
Yeah.
So and they've expressed to us that they want to help. You know, they want to do the sports charters because they're leaving money on the table for them, but it's just they don't have the availability. They don't have the drivers till after 4 p.m. when the elementary runs in. So that's why we were moving times around to accommodate school bus transportation for them. So that's all I got. So anything
Thank
else?
you.
Anybody? Thank you.
Okay, Anna, you're the chair.
Adjourn transportation.
Second.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for your attendance and, any other input on any items, agenda or non? If not, we will adjourn. I will ask the board to take a 5-minute recess and have a short executive session following this meeting. Thank you. Good night.
Good night.